Chapter 678. Everyone was in the same circle. In this newly opened gambling hall, there were indeed many gamblers who recognized Black Panther. At least they could recognize Black Panther's Continental car and his license plate. But Lu Zixing walked out safely after getting in Brother Black Panther's car for a while. Even Brother Black Panther left with his men without saying anything. I saw it. It seems that Lu Zixing gave Black Panther a check. It should be the one he asked this gambling hall to prepare. So, he had long expected that Black Panther would block people outside? This is not a wall that doesn't leak. Black Panther has already issued a red flower to reward Lu Zixing. Probably someone here took the red flower and told Black Panther. Yes, but this casino is really interesting. He can still be so generous after losing money. TSK, I'm beginning to wonder who the boss behind it is. Yeah, don't think about getting back the money that has entered Black Panther's pocket. Well, this place is really good. You can play anything. As long as you are here, it is safe. Don't you see that Black Panther doesn't dare to come in and take people? Feng Shan was listening to the news that the staff had inquired about, and a smile appeared on his face involuntarily. As the third miss had thought, this was indeed a good opportunity to establish a good reputation. After this, the Four Seasons Falling Flowers Hotel Club temporarily established a foothold in this city. In the future, as long as they walked step by step normally, they would make huge profits. In this way, losing a few $100 million was really not a big deal. Of course, it was only for the 3rd Mississippi director. I didn't expect this Black Panther to be so peaceful. He knew that Lu Zixing had won so much, but he took back his own money and left directly. Feng Shan sneered. This proves that this guy will be difficult to deal with in the future. He must have calculated something so he didn't act recklessly. Even if we are powerful, this Black Panther is the local snake. Sooner or later, we will have to fight. Then, on Lu Zixing's side, are we really not doing anything? The subordinate frowned. It's almost time for me to get off work. Feng Shan waved his hand. Let Ajay deal with the gambling hall. As for the rest, I'll leave it to you. You can make your own decisions. It's fine as long as you have a sense of propriety. It's not wrong to ask for some benefits for our brothers. After saying that, Feng Shan smiled faintly, pushed open the door and left. His subordinate, seeing Feng Shan leave, had a fanatical look in his eyes. He already understood the meaning behind Feng Shan's words. How was he supposed to ask for benefits for his brothers? Naturally, it was to get the money back from the accounts. Of course, the biggest benefit was still to be given to Feng Shan. Feng Shan was a member of the Four Seasons Corporation, and coming here to be the director was equivalent to being a governor of the border. This was a lucrative job to begin with. As for those above Wind Mountain, as long as the accounts were done well and the actual profits were not damaged, with how busy the third miss was, she probably wouldn't find out even after 8 to 10 years. Even if they found out, they would probably just turn a blind eye to it. With so many soldiers, they were not united in the first place. If their subordinates did not have enough to eat, who would be willing to work hard? Besides, it's true that the third miss needs to establish a brand, but this Lu Zixing is such a gambler. Who knows if he doesn't have other debts besides Black Panther? For such a guy, even if he died on the street, no one would be surprised. Every man for himself, and the devil takes the hindmost. The industry of gambling was originally a chain of interests that were interconnected. Let's do it. He made a phone call and left with a sneer. Along the way, Ho Chen Yuhan was already sweating profusely and had difficulty breathing. She was just an ordinary person with limited physical strength. As for Lu Zixing, he was also gasping for breath. Why didn't you just go straight into the hotel? The people who caught up from behind were of unknown origin, and they chased after him tightly. We can't go back. Lu Zixing gasped. It will be worse if we go back. How do you know? Intuition. Lu Zixing didn't look back and directly told Ho Chen Yuhan, I have such a hunch. As long as it is not past 1:30 this morning, I believe in my hunch. The two quickly hid in an alley. As soon as they stopped, Ho Chin Yuhan couldn't hold on anymore. She leaned back against the wall, hugged her bag, and slumped to the ground. Since graduating from school, she had never run more than 200 meters. It was incredible to be chased down the street like this tonight. I can't walk anymore. Ho Chin Yuhan looked at Lu Zixing in horror. She wanted him to take her out. It was just jumping from one fire pit into another fire pit. Why don't you call the police? My cell phone is out of battery. You can't call the police. Lu Zixing rested with one hand on the wall. This is a new development zone. The police station here is very messy. Perhaps the municipal bureau was very righteous, but Lu Zixing knew a lot about this station. In the past, there were several guys who deliberately went in to avoid Black Panther's debt, but they were still directly taken out. Black Panther also had the ability to get people out. Then, the people chasing him could do the same. Your ear. Ho Chin Yuhan suddenly covered her mouth in horror. It turned out that Lu Zixing subconsciously lifted the hat attached to his clothes because he was too hot. The gauze on his ear naturally couldn't be hidden. Even because of the strenuous exercise, the wound burst again, and blood flowed out. It was very painful. But Lu Zixing smiled bleakly and looked at Ho Chin Yuhan. It was cut off the night before yesterday. Are they the people who are chasing us now? Ho Chin Yuhan was even more shocked. Lu Zixing shook his head. No, it's the group of people who left before. They also run casinos. I lost a lot there, and I had no money to pay them back. They cut off my ear and planned to send it to my house. Planned to? I escaped. Lu Zixing sighed. I don't know if it was sent over. I think I should go back and take a look. However, there shouldn't be any problem. My family won't be worried. Ho Chin Yuhan was taken aback. She really couldn't understand Lu Zixing's words. What won't be worried? A family? Remember. Lu Zixing suddenly looked at Ho Chin Yuhan. In this world, except for money, all the important things that belong to you can't be lost. If you lose them, I will end up like that. You shouldn't go to a place like a casino in the future. Consider it a piece of advice. I was really just dragged here. I didn't know there was a casino in the hotel. Ho Chin Yuhan shook her head. Lu Zixing didn't intend to delve into it. As Black Panther said, if he removed the gambling fly, he might not be a bad person. Let's not discuss this anymore. Lu Zixing seemed to have recovered. While looking out, he said indifferently, It doesn't matter if you want to listen or not. I just said what I should say. You run when you see the opportunity later. I will go out first and lead them away. If you don't come with me, they are just coming for me. Be careful. Wait. Hey. Lu Zixing had already put on his hat again and rushed out directly. He looked at the time displayed on his phone. There were still the last 15 minutes. Ho Chin Yuhan hid in the alley and heard the movement outside. Those people seemed to be attracted by Lu Zixing all of a sudden. However, she hid here alone. The surroundings were dim, the street lights were not on, and there was no one in the middle of the night. Naturally, she was extremely scared. She really didn't have the courage to leave here. Originally, before today, she was just an ordinary ceramic art teacher in an ordinary ceramic art classroom. She never thought that she would encounter such a thrilling thing. She thought of her tragic experience and couldn't help but shed tears. After a long time, she didn't know if Lu Zixing had escaped. Ho Chin Yuhan finally mustered up her courage. She didn't dare to stay in this place any longer. She looked out and found that there was no one outside. She gritted her teeth, lowered her head, and rushed out quickly. At this time, a strong light came from her side and the sound of a motorcycle engine. Ho Chin Yuhan turned her head and looked. The headlights of the motorcycle were like the sun. She couldn't see anything at once. She could only hear the sound of the engine approaching quickly. Are you all useless? There are so many people, and you can't even catch two people? A lot of accidents have happened. We were just about to catch up, but as soon as we turned the corner, a tramp who was picking up garbage with a cart came out and hit us. We saw it on the forked road and went straight up. As a result, it was just people who happened to wear the same clothes. It wasn't him at all. Also, there was a sudden power outage on this road. It was too dark. All of a sudden. I don't want to listen to your explanation. I want people. Bring him back right now. Don't worry, I have already asked my brothers to ride out. Found him. The person who said this was actually already riding a motorcycle. At this time, without saying anything, he stuffed the phone into his pocket. His hand suddenly pressed on the accelerator, and his hands exerted force. The motorcycle stood upright at a 40-50 degree angle, and directly sped towards the man in front, Lu Zixing. Damn it, has my luck run out? Lu Zixing looked at the motorcycle that was rushing toward him and rolled on the ground to avoid it. However, he saw that the other two motorcycles were rushing toward him at this time. The development zone was too far away and it was late at night. There were no taxis willing to come here to pick up customers, and no Didi drivers appeared nearby. He couldn't encounter any more coincidences. Sure enough, his luck had run out. Lu Zixing gritted his teeth, knowing that he was afraid that he couldn't escape from these people, so he directly reached out to grab the hidden coin without thinking. At least he could still bet with the boss. Even if he ran out of luck, at least the bet with the boss was absolutely fair. Even if he had the worst luck now, there was still a 50% chance of winning. Let's bet. He suddenly calmed down. I have lost all my life. I don't want to lose again, let alone in this place. He held the coin in his hand and was about to call the boss out, but at this time, found it. Here. Lu Zixing subconsciously turned his head and saw 4 or 5 men holding slender molten iron pipes or black sticks in their hand. They rushed out directly. A van also stopped in front at this time. These big men rushed to the front of the 3 motorcycles, swung the tools in their hands, and smashed them without saying a word. The destructive power was amazing. Lu Zixing opened his mouth. Aren't these people Black Panther's men? Why did they suddenly come to save me? Young Master Lu, are you okay? A bald man with a face full of fat came in front of Lu Zixing at this time. Lu Zixing felt like he had just escaped from the tiger's mouth and entered the wolf's den. His face was pale. No. Why did you come to save me? Oh, our boss said. The guy with a fat face said casually. If anyone dares to touch you, we will kill him. Come on, we will protect you. Get in the car. Lu Zixing couldn't figure out Black Panther's meaning for a while. But facing these guys with unknown origins riding motorcycles and the blades behind them, Lu Zixing thought it would be better to meet Black Panther again. At least he had been dealing with them. He nodded, and then under the escort of several people, he got on the van that took him to the dog farm last time. He didn't know what the road ahead was, and he had no premonition. There was only uneasiness. He subconsciously looked at the time. Turned out that the time had just run out. Zhu, where are you? Brother Black Panther hurriedly asked on the phone. I'm at the front door of 4 Seasons Fallen Flowers Hotel. Despite this, the engine of the modified black motorcycle did not stop. Zhu Maolin just opened the helmet cover and looked around. F***ck, so fast? Didn't you say you were still at home? I'm going against the speed. Zhu Maolin said indifferently. F***ck. You really dare? No, this is you. Don't talk about this. Black Panther, do you know who those people are? Why do they want to catch my wife? I don't know, but it shouldn't be to catch sister-in-law. You have been out of the racing world for so many years. There shouldn't be anyone who wants to deal with you. I guess they are here for Lu Zixing. That guy is addicted to gambling. I don't know how much money he owes outside. I heard that he just won hundreds of millions from the 4 Seasons Hotel. They are probably watching him. Wait, I need to answer the phone. There is probably news. After a while, Brother Black Panther quickly changed the phone and said, Zhu Lu Zixing was rescued, but we didn't find sister-in-law. He separated from sister-in-law and led those people away by himself. Where did they separate at that time? There was a power outage, and it was too dark nearby. He didn't notice. Where did your people leave him? The place on North 4th Street. Zhu Maolin took a deep breath, slammed the helmet cover down, and tightened the throttle. The modified motorcycle swerved directly in front of the Four Seasons Fallen Flower Hotel. On this deserted road in the middle of the night, it went against the flow again. 3 motorcycles circled around Ho Chin Yuhan. She could only shrink in place, not daring to look up. She was like a drowning victim in the sea who was being attacked by sharks. Tell me, where is Lu Zixing? The person on one of the motorcycles shouted coldly at this time. Tell us obediently, and we won't hurt you. Lu Zixing, you mean that person? Ho Chin Yuhan had to think helplessly. Until now, I didn't know the guy's full name. I don't know. I have already run away. Ho Chin Yuhan shook her head. Humph, you won't shed tears until you see the coffin? The man sneered. I just don't know if you can run fast enough. Tie her up and drag her away. Let's see how long she can be stubborn. Seeing one of the riders directly take out a white rope, Ho Chin Yuhan trembled in horror. Her body went soft. She was indeed just the most ordinary woman. How could she resist these men if she wanted to? Just at the moment when the rider was about to make a move, on a wall not far away, a figure that was alternating between virtual and real suddenly materialized. The figure was wearing a scarf, squinting his eyes with a sullen expression. It was Onyx Soul Taisetsu who was playing here. He said coldly, the rule of the underworld is not to harm the wife and children. Why don't you understand? The boss didn't stipulate that I can't kill people. Jean Lu. He opened his palm, and a small long sword was spinning in his palm. The small sword instantly grew bigger, and was about to shoot out from his palm, but it suddenly stopped. He once again hid in the dark night. The roar of the huge motorcycle that didn't belong here suddenly sounded. The fourth strong light was also like a sharp sword, piercing directly into here. Chapter 679. That was the roar of a beast. With a rumbling sound, the black modified motorcycle actually dashed down the steep staircase at the side. The bumpy posture was like a ferocious tiger shaking its body in anger. It was awe-inspiring. Taisetsu, who was hiding in the nothingness of the night, gently hung Jean Lu, who had transformed into a key again, around his neck. At the same time, he tidied up his scarf and said softly, a man should be like this, Zhu Maolin, not bad. Taisetsu changed from standing to sitting. He leisurely unscrewed a bottle of green tea and drank by himself with a smile on his face. At this moment, one of the riders shouted, Who is it? The black modified motorcycle suddenly braked, and the huge inertia caused the back half of the motorcycle to be lifted up. However, the person on the motorcycle twisted forcefully, and the back half of the motorcycle actually turned and slammed into the rider, causing him to roll to the ground. Damn it! Several other people cursed at the same time, and they rushed over frantically without saying a word. But the man on the black motorcycle pulled out a huge silver wrench from the motorcycle. He was like a knight riding a horse in ancient times, dancing fiercely. This kind of big wrench was long and hard. It could easily injure a person's bones. It was a super-killing weapon. Get on! He, who was waving the huge long wrench in his hand, shouted loudly at this time. Ho Chin Yuhan was shocked. She recognized this familiar voice and said in surprise, Husband! Get on! Zhu Maolin threw the wrench in his hand directly at this time, slamming it on the shoulder of another rider who wanted to pounce on him. The rider was in great pain. At the same time, he pressed the accelerator again. The black motorcycle started again and rushed toward Ho Chin Yuhan. He grabbed Ho Chin Yuhan's palm with one hand, lifted her up, and sat behind him. Hold me tight. Ho Chin Yuhan didn't think about anything at all, nor did she think about why Zhu Maolin was here. She just felt very safe at this moment. She gritted her teeth and nodded, then she hugged Zhu Maolin's back with all her strength. A lot of dust was caused by the friction between the high-speed rotating tires and the ground. Zhu Maolin ignored these riders and rushed out. Chase. Keep chasing. The riders who had fallen to the ground gritted their teeth and endured the pain as they got up. They hurriedly picked up the motorcycle that had fallen to the ground, stepped on it slowly, and madly chased after it like a ferocious hyena chasing after a lion. Hubby, we'll talk about it later. Zhu Maolin didn't turn his head. He simply responded, but his voice was very gentle, hold me tighter. Ho Qin Yuhan nodded gently, and her hands holding Zhu Maolin tightened unconsciously. Zhu Maolin looked at the rearview mirror of the motorcycle. The 3 motorcycles behind were in hot pursuit at this time, approaching crazily. Looking at the way these guys drive, I'm afraid they are not ordinary riders. Zhu Maolin narrowed his eyes. So what? Who can catch up with him? Even though his hand was separated, his palm seemed to be directly connected to the motorcycle's directional handle at this moment. Zhu Maolin's body suddenly bent down a little, and his chest was almost attached to the motorcycle's accelerator. Amidst the wind, the black motorcycle tilted hard to the ground on the left side and turned away directly at the shortest distance. The thrilling degree made Ho Qin Yuhan subconsciously close her eyes, and her heart pounded. Damn, who is this guy? Even if they were in hot pursuit, they could only barely reach the level of hot pursuit. The distance was even widening little by little. For the riders, this was no less than the most thorough humiliation. In this kind of speed competition, being constantly left behind by the opponent was something that all the riders in the world didn't want to see. They couldn't help but step on the accelerator frantically. Their eyes were already red with anxiety. The guy driving the black motorcycle in front was too arrogant. At this moment, he was going in the opposite direction. Although it was so late at night, even if he was going in the opposite direction, there were no cars on the road of this new development zone. This direction. This guy is planning to get on the highway. We can't let him get on. Yes, this guy's motorcycle is modified too well. Most people won't modify it like this. Once he gets on the highway, we can't catch up anymore. I'll go around the front to outflank him. The higher the speed of the motorcycle, the louder the engine roar. Especially on the avenue of this empty development zone, it was like the roar of an air defense exercise, deafening. A rider must have taken a shortcut at this time. At this moment, he charged directly in front of Zhu Maolin, holding a thick and long iron chain in his hand. Husband, close your eyes, don't be afraid. I won't be there. Zhu Maolin quickly looked at the surrounding environment and found that there was no usable terrain, but he unreasonably pulled out another wrench from the gap of the motorcycle's front. When the rider who was intercepting in front saw this guy pull out another wrench, his heart jumped in fright. This guy, does he always bring this kind of violent weapon when he goes out? Just who is the one in the underworld here? The intercepting rider was instinctively afraid of this terrifying wrench, after all. He shrank his head abruptly, and his body even trembled. Zhu Maolin was unobstructed. He quietly drifted away from the other party's interception. But Zhu Maolin didn't intend to rush to the highway again. Instead, he drove directly toward the urban area on this development road. The urban area was much more prosperous. There were more vehicles going home or leaving late at night on the road. The whistling wind made Ho Qin Yuhan unable to hear anything. She hid behind Zhu Maolin, so the whistling wind didn't make her unable to open her eyes. She couldn't hear any sound other than the wind, even if the sound of the engine was so close. Her body swayed with the swaying of the black motorcycle. The wind hit her clothes with a bone-chilling chill. She didn't know how many private cars Zhu Maolin had passed. Only the road ahead was a long road, like a curved road leading to a castle on a high mountain in an oil painting. There was no one on the endless road. Ho Qin Yuhan raised her head slightly. The surrounding buildings gradually stacked up. It was no longer the empty development zone. The bustling downtown had long been quiet, but the neon lights that brought light pollution were still shining. But the neon lights were also like layers of aurora. They had a curvature. The black motorcycles that were traveling on the huge curved ring road had an arc as they quickly passed over Ho Chin Yuhan's head. The motorcycle seemed to go from one end to the other. It walked to the end of the road, then finally jumped out of the camera and disappeared. The three riders finally stopped. In the end, they couldn't even see the tail light of the black motorcycle. They could only give up sadly. The chill was still there. After all, it was winter at the end of December. From being frightened to being frightened, Ho Chin Yuhan had been frightened the whole day. At this time, her body was trembling because of the cold, but she didn't know why she felt relieved. Did Zhu Maolin slow down? Ho Chin Yuhan didn't know. She didn't have the ability to measure the speed of the motorcycle. However, the whistling not only covered all her hearing, but it also seemed to entangle everything that passed by in the world, making them deep in the mud. Slow down, slow down. Everything gradually slowed down in front of her eyes. She tried hard to make her half-opened eyes widen a little, then she put her ear behind Zhu Maolin. This seemed to be able to break the noise of the whistling wind and hear the heartbeat in his body. It was strong and powerful. The speed of the motorcycle might have slowed down, and the cold wind was no longer so piercing. Ho Chin Yuhan suddenly said, "I just felt that my body seemed to be lifted up. Is it the wind?" Zhu Maolin just tilted his head slightly, opened the lid of the helmet and said with a smile, "You are too fat. How can the wind lift you up unless it is a level 12 typhoon?" Ho Chin Yuhan opened her mouth and wanted to bite this guy's ear, but she saw that he was wearing a helmet, so she had to give up. She suddenly chuckled, lying on Zhu Maolin's back and chuckled, "I haven't laughed so happily for a long time. And I heard it. Husband, let's take another lap before going home, okay?" The black motorcycle finally stopped in its original position, and Zhu Maolin covered it with the canvas again. Ho Chin Yuhan stood next to him. "It was not cold in the underground parking lot anymore," she said softly. "It hasn't been driven for more than a year, right?" "Actually, I have driven it." Zhu Maolin shook his head. His gaze was a little complicated. "I have driven it secretly." Ho Chin Yuhan raised her head and asked, "When you don't go home and talk about working overtime?" "Occasionally." Zhu Maolin didn't see the anger in his wife's eyes. He just stretched out his hand and grabbed Ho Chin Yuhan's arm above her wrist. He pulled her to the elevator and walked in. She was well behaved, just like when they first met. Later, in front of the house, Zhu Maolin touched his body and found that he didn't bring the key. Ho Chin Yuhan knocked on his head. She was the one who opened the door. Before she had time to turn on the lights in the living room, Zhu Maolin, who came in later, reached out and closed the door. He directly pressed Ho Chin Yuhan's body against the wall at the entrance, held her cheek with one hand, and kissed her violently. She unbuttoned his clothes. He unbuttoned her clothes. All the clothes were thrown on the ground casually. Zhu Maolin lifted Ho Chin Yuhan's leg on one side, and his private part forcefully filled her emptiness over the years. The flame of love and lust between them reignited. The beautiful flower cards hidden in Ho Chin Yuhan's clothes also quietly disappeared. What Boss Luo reassembled in his hand was the flower card that disappeared quietly. It meant that the business this time had been cancelled. Of course, this business had not started. The customer was still hesitating when buying. Since they didn't mention it, there was naturally no follow-up. This was the first time Luochio cancelled a transaction automatically since he took office. But Boss Luo didn't care. Boss Luo nodded and said calmly, "The time difference is gone." With a wave of his hand, the flower card in his hand disappeared. Boss Luo snapped his fingers. Since husband and wife can mate, they can naturally reproduce. This is human nature. They should have a very good child in the future. All the misfortunes. Who knows? The boss, who was thinking about something, looked at the maid beside him at this moment, smiled, and said, "Even if the transaction is not successful, we should still be righteous. It's not good to let people stop profiteers all day." "Master, are you talking about Miss Long?" The maid blinked. "I didn't say that." Chapter 680. This time, Lu Zixing was not treated by Brother Black Panther. Wasn't it? Compared to the last time when he was trapped in a dog cage and surrounded by countless ferocious dogs, this time he was just sitting in the back seat of a van sandwiched between two big men. Although there was still a taboo atmosphere, it was much better. Even the bald macho man sitting in front gave him a bottle of water to drink. It wasn't until 4 o'clock in the morning that the bald macho man in front received a phone call. He nodded quickly, then looked at Lu Zixing and shouted, "The boss said that you can go now." Lu Zixing was startled. "Black Panther protected me like this, then let me stay for a while before letting me go. Is it because of the unknown woman that I brought out of the gambling hall? After these people saved me, they specifically asked about the woman." Everything was abnormal at this time. Even the fact that Black Panther didn't make things difficult for me at the beginning was probably related to the seemingly ordinary woman. Thinking of this, from the moment he chose the woman to draw cards for him, he had already planted the good luck of this night. Every sip and peck seemed to be fated. In this, is it just because of luck? Lu Zixing couldn't figure this out. The luck he won for the day should have disappeared. At this time, his mind was muddy, groggy, and exhausted. He was not like a few hours ago when he was lucky. His face was flushed, and he was full of energy as if he had the help of God. At this time, although the bald macho man had said that he could leave, the two men beside him were motionless. Saying and doing were different. Lu Zixing had experienced many things, and he already had some understanding in his heart, so he simply said, "Brothers, thank you for your hard work tonight. Take 500,000 each as the tea fee." Lu Zixing didn't care about this small amount of money in the past, and now he naturally didn't care. As the saying goes, the little devil is difficult to deal with. It was referring to these people who were his subordinate. He took out his mobile phone. Now, the function of the mobile phone was too perfect. He gave each of the men in the car 500,000 yuan as a red packet. Only then did these big men send Lu Zixing off the car with a smile. They even asked him where he wanted to go, and they could send him there directly and so on. Lu Zixing thought about it. He was still in the scope of the new development zone. He didn't know where the riders who caught him came from. It was not safe to stay in the vicinity. It was better to take advantage of his unclear relationship with Black Panther and take a ride. He simply let these burly men send him directly back to the city, then each of them got off and disappeared into the nearby street. Soon after, Lu Zixing casually found a dilapidated hotel to stay. At this time, he was sleepy, tired, and even hungry. He casually asked for a bowl of instant noodles from the front desk of the hotel and a bottle of water before going upstairs alone. The good thing about a small hotel like this was that one could easily stay in it, and there weren't too many procedures. There was only a simple white single bed in the small room, and there were a few small cards on the ground when he entered the room. The smell of disinfectant was a bit pungent, and the light was not bright. Obviously, it had not been changed for a long time. Lu Zixing had lived a luxurious life since he was a child. This kind of ordinary instant noodles had a strong taste of seasoning, but it made him hungry instead. He finished it quickly and even drank up the soup. Looking at the last remnants of the noodles stuck to the bottom of the bowl of instant noodles, Lu Zixing did not let it go. He directly scraped it with a fork, put it into his mouth, and chewed slowly. This careful taste seemed to be better than 100 delicacies. Lu Zixing suddenly put down everything in his hands and covered his eyes with his hands. The taste of loneliness filled his heart. He remembered the scene of killing his father with his own hands in the Lu family's mansion that night. Unconsciously, he burst into tears. For most demons who cultivated with the help of moonlight, the best time was from midnight at night. If they were more diligent, they could use it until the moon finally disappeared. On the rooftop of the building, Xuefeng, who had learned a new technique from Zixing, increased his beastkin power by nearly 10% in just 2 or 3 days. This meager amount of beastkin power was naturally incomparable to the peak power that even Kelowna's Shinryu not long ago. However, Xuefeng knew that he had nothing to do with the demon wolf. As for the mysterious power from his father's side, it had been quiet since then. He had returned to his original form, no different from an ordinary little monster. So at this time, seeing the rapid growth of his beastkin power, he was naturally happy. Xuefeng slowly opened his eyes and ended the night's cultivation. Although there was still an hour before the moonlight disappeared, he already felt that his body was expanding at this time. He knew that he had absorbed too much moonlight in the past few days, and he had not completely refined it into beastkin power. If he continued to absorb it, it would only be counterproductive, so he had to give up. However, Zixing was still absorbing the moonlight. The moonlight was like a silver stream, rushing towards Zixing from all directions, but the effect was several times better than Xuefeng's. After 2 days of cultivation and internal adjustment during cultivation, Zixing's face had recovered its rosy color, and she could walk normally during the day. She recovered so quickly. Maybe she will leave soon? There were also some wolf-type monsters in this city, but so far, only Zixing looked about the same size as him, and she was a rare female. Zixing even had a strange attraction to him, and Xuefeng subconsciously developed feelings of admiration. It was just that he had never had such an experience before, so he didn't know how to deal with it at all. Thinking that Zixing and he were just strangers who met by chance, and maybe they would part soon, he couldn't help but feel a little irritated. He was worried about gains and losses, and he couldn't say anything. At this time, Zixing had almost finished absorbing the moonlight for the night. Her consciousness had already woken up, and she naturally felt the gaze directed at her from the outside world. Her heart trembled slightly. Her current appearance was only because she was too injured, and her strength had regressed, so she had shrunk to this size. She could easily read the meaning of the gaze that was looking at her. Many people in the Greedy Wolf clan were like this. Some of the warriors of the Greedy Wolf clan were outstanding, but she didn't care about them. Naturally, she wouldn't care about such a little aardwolf monster. He was not even an adult monster yet. In her opinion, Xuefeng was probably just a child, with a young heart, instinctively yearning for the opposite sex. She wouldn't stay any longer. Teaching Xuefeng a high-level technique suitable for the wolf clan was already a reward. How far this little aardwolf could grow after this would depend on his own opportunities. However, Xuefeng seemed to have a good comprehension ability. He was already familiar with this technique in only 2 days, which surprised her a little. She was just surprised in her heart, but she only treated it as a very strange individual, and did not really take it to heart. There were many monster clans. Although the major clans had declined, there were still some individuals. Although their innate bloodline was not precious, they were still very talented. In the future, they might have the potential to become a great monster beast. But at most, they were only at the level of a great monster beast. However, many monsters in Kelowna only regarded the great monster beast as the pinnacle of the monster race. They regarded it as a lifelong pursuit, but they didn't know that there was a higher level above the great monster beast. For example, Kelowna and Shinryu were at a higher level. As for those with impure bloodlines but good talents, reaching the great monster beast was the limit. There was no possibility of climbing higher. This was the unbreakable bloodline shackles of the monster race. Zixing didn't know why she thought so much at this time. She only thought that Xuefeng's excellent talent was the reason why she was inexplicably interested. She exhaled slightly and finally opened her eyes. Xuefeng hurriedly looked away at this time, as if he had been discovered. Zixing felt funny in her heart. This little guy didn't know that she was the young master of the noblest Greedy Wolf clan. Naturally, he would not be as cautious as the young talents in the clan when they were together. She also hadn't felt this relaxed for a long time. She couldn't help but smile slightly. Is there something on my face? Why do you keep looking at me? Well, you haven't washed your face for several days. Your face is actually a little dirty. Jue Feng looked at Madame Purple Star and suddenly squeezed out such words. I don't know how to communicate with her. What can I do? I'm also desperate. Oh no, she must hate me. Chapter 681. Although Christmas Eve and Christmas Eve were imported, in the era of cultural invasion between the East and the West, most of the young people in the East almost regarded this Western festival as a traditional festival. Of course, it was a date. All the hotels had been fully booked, and the tickets for all the major cinemas had been sold out. Christmas Eve had not arrived yet, and most of the new generation were not in the mood to work. Looking at the clock on the wall, coupled with the fact that tomorrow was a holiday weekend, they believed that the work pressure that had accumulated for a week would be released well. Don't dream. Even if Christmas is here, it can't change the nature of single dogs. Work overtime for me. In the newspaper office where sub-editor Ren worked, the boss stood in front of the office with his hands on his hips, scolding a group of employees who were not in the mood to work. As a bystander, Lizzie had no pressure to be scolded by the single dogs. She was trying to destroy a new flavor of potato chip, but sub-editor Ren next to her was full of sadness, sighing like a woman locked in the depths of a big house, watching the autumn leaves fall. For a moment, Lizzie seemed to see the landlord's concubine wearing a kimono during the Meiji Restoration 100 years ago. Sister Ren, what's wrong with you? I'm going to die. Ren Xiling lay on the table. She looked like a defeated dog, as if she had been ruined countless times. She looked at Lizzie in despair and said, This month's performance is not good. I still have 3 articles to write, and I haven't written a column. I still have to write a public account tonight. But Sister Ren, isn't working overtime the right way for you to start your daily life? The sound of potato chips breaking in Lizzie's mouth was like the sound of Ren Xiling's glass heart breaking. She opened her eyes weakly. Luochu asked me to have dinner tonight, saying that it's a rare holiday and Yi. I refused. Because of this damn overtime. Lizzie blinked. Don't you have me to accompany you? No, thank you. Eat potato chips? Lizzie blinked her eyes and was reluctant, but she still took out a piece of potato chip and fed it to Ren Xiling. Ren Xiling also opened her mouth and chewed it into pieces. Lizzie giggled and said, It's time to work. Let me. Ren Xiling said seriously, Let me free myself again. It was obvious that he was in the last stage of laziness and had given up on treatment long ago. Purple Star's original clothes were a bit strange, like the clothing of an ethnic minority. Going out like this would inevitably attract a lot of strange gazes. Considering this, Zhuifeng proposed to change her clothes. However, the only clothes he could find were the ones he had worn before. Was there a need to buy them? Unfortunately, the human world did not employ child labor for the time being. Without a job, the 3 meals a day basically depended on hunting or eating at Cheese's house. Zhuifeng searched the entire house, and only found a few coins. Of course, there was another way for monsters to earn money quickly, and that was to use their own condensed demonic beads to exchange for money at the Elysium Bar. But although the Elysium Bar had this kind of service, for the monsters, demonic power was their foundation. Naturally, not many monsters were willing to use this service. It was already a little difficult to spend money in the bar. Wouldn't it be stupid to exchange for money in the human world? I'm sorry, I can only find these for the time being. Zhuifeng looked at Purple Star who had put on his clothes, but you can rest assured that I washed it very well. 3 times. 3 times. Give me your hat for a moment. Zixing chuckled. She reached out and took off the hat from Windchaser's head, then put it on her own head. Coincidentally, her long ears that couldn't be hidden for the time being were also included. Thinking that Purple Star not only wore his hat and clothes, but even the underwear inside was also his, Juefeng felt a sense of dryness in his mouth. Should I not wash the clothes after changing out of them? Juefeng, Juefeng? Purple Star suddenly called out softly. I'm not messing up. Juefeng came back to his senses. Ah? What did you just say? I didn't hear it clearly. Purple Star smiled. I said, I am not familiar with this city. Where are you going to take me? Juefeng asked subconsciously. I can take you wherever you want to go. There is no place here that I am not familiar with. Then let's go there. Purple Star thought for a while, waved her hand, and pointed to a building in the center of the city. This was the tallest building in the city, and it was located in the center of the city. Juefeng was taken aback. He didn't understand where Purple Star wanted to go, but he didn't ask much and agreed directly. Okay. Juefeng nodded, but it is broad daylight now. Let's use the human method to go there. I'll drive you there. Car? Purple Star was slightly surprised. However, when she saw Juefeng pushing out a semi-new bicycle at this time, she opened her mouth slightly, but in the end, she didn't speak. She just smiled and said, Then let's go. She didn't really agree to accompany Juefeng to go out, but it has been a few days since she was seriously injured that day. Now that she has recovered some strength to move, she naturally wanted to find news of her subordinate. On that day, because 2 wolf warriors were suddenly killed by the white-haired human woman, when she used the secret technique Greedy Wolf's Descent, she had to extract a large amount of vitality from the remaining 2 warriors. Although she still had some reservations, the remaining 2 warriors were probably seriously injured at this time. It's just that she didn't know if these 2 warriors were now looking for a place to heal their wounds or were also looking for the young master of Purple Star. Therefore, she agreed to Juefeng's invitation. As for going to the highest place in the center of the city, she naturally had other plans, but she still needed to wait until midnight. Since this Juefeng is acquainted with Master Long Jun, should she use him to visit Master Long Jun? Purple Star thought to herself, but she quickly dispelled this idea. The Wolf Clan was arrogant, not to mention the king of the Wolf Clan, the Greedy Wolf Clan. This time, not only did a human woman snatch the secret treasure, but as the young master, she was also seriously injured and her body degenerated. This kind of thing was really a disgrace to the name of the Greedy Wolf Clan. If it was spread out, she would be a sinner in the clan. While thinking so, Purple Star followed Juefeng all the way down to the roof of the building where she was staying. Juefeng naturally carried the bicycle all the way down. Purple Star didn't think much about it. She sat sideways at the back of the bicycle. While thinking about her future actions, she subconsciously used her right hand to support Juefeng's lower back and leaned forward slightly. It was just that Juefeng seemed to suddenly stiffen his body, so Purple Star asked curiously, Why aren't you leaving yet? Okay. Since Professor Chui Fo suggested using the secret method to improve magic power, whether it was Wang Yuechuan or himself, their magic power could see considerable growth every day. With the improved magic power, they could refer more to the contents of the Book of the Dead, to use magic. For the 2 who had just come into contact with this kind of power, it was naturally something that they couldn't help but be happy about. The 2 were silent all day long in the development of new fields, and they were quite unaware of the passage of time. King, there are no places like mass graves nearby. Professor Chui Fo paced in the apartment at this time with his hands behind his back. Without a large number of spirit transformation, our cultivation speed will return to the previous slow. If it could be fast, it would not be slow. Anyone would be the same. Wang Yuechuan listened and nodded. After thinking for a while, he asked, Professor, do you have any good suggestions? That ritual requires a lot of spirit. Professor Chui Fo said quickly, The mass graves we have used in the past few days are very effective, but in fact, the number of spirits is not much. According to the description in the Book of the Dead, the longer the death, the better the quality of the spirit. These mass graves are old, and they are not in the best condition. I suggest that we go to the city's cemetery quietly. Wang Yuechuan shook his head and said, Professor, our country uses cremation. Although it is a cemetery, most of them are empty. According to the Book of the Dead, a person will be a single spirit after death, but they must foster a body for a period of time before they can leave. I'm afraid the situation in the cemetery is not the best choice. Professor Chui Fo patted his head and nodded. I have neglected this. In my country, the bodies are sent to the cemetery. And, King, why don't we go abroad before the new year? Wang Yuechuan was silent for a while and shook his head. It is inconvenient for me to go abroad now, but it doesn't mean that I can't go abroad in the future. I need some time to prepare. As for the improvement of magic power, if there is really no way, then let's slow down. I can also consolidate it. Professor Chui Fo was obviously unwilling to do the so-called consolidation. In his opinion, the human body had infinite potential as a container of magic power. Under such a huge container, the more magic power improvement, the better. This Wang Yuechuan seemed to be a little conservative. He shook his head and suggested abruptly, there is another place where there should be a lot of spirits, and they are absolutely fresh. It is even easier for you to reach there. Wang Yuechuan frowned. You mean, the police station's morgue? Professor Chui Fo nodded and said with blazing eyes, The Book of the Dead mentions that the more intense the hatred, unwillingness, despair, and other emotions are born in the body, the stronger the spirit after death. This part is most suitable for those who died unjustly. I think there must be a lot of such dead people in that place. Indeed, the corpses in that morgue were basically not unnatural death. Some of them had not even been claimed for a long time. In the words of these public officials, the morgue's resentment was extremely heavy. Many people in the organization who were assigned to guard the morgue were rumored to not look good. Some retired old people were still sick. If it was because of the spirit, then this trip could not only improve his magic power, but he could also solve this so-called resentment, so that the civilian police officers working in the morgue would not be eroded by the spirit. It was a win-win situation. Wang Yuechuan didn't think for too long and nodded. It was just that it was troublesome to use crystals to set up a ritual array in the morgue. However, thinking that his current magic power was just enough to cast some of the magic mentioned in the Book of the Dead, perhaps it was just the right time to experiment. If it was successful, then it would explain why Chao Yu was able to take things from the evidence room openly without anyone seeing it. King? Nothing. Wang Yuechuan shook his head slightly. I just remembered some small things. I have no problem entering the morgue with my authority. I can even bring you in. However, Professor, are you sure you want to go today? Why not? Professor Chui Fo smiled slightly. Wang Yuechuan shrugged and said indifferently, Today is Christmas Eve. For you, it should be the most important festival, right? For Chui Fo, this was equivalent to the traditional spring festival for Wang Yuechuan. Therefore, even if he knew that this place could improve his magic power, Wang Yuechuan would not touch such bad luck on such a traditional festival. It was not because of superstition but just a little respect for tradition. What's more, that place couldn't run away and no one would use it. Naturally, he wouldn't be impatient. Professor Chui Fo also smiled indifferently and waved his hand. King, since we got the Book of the Dead, you and I are no longer ordinary people. We are already transcendent. What's the point of this festival for us? It's more meaningful to improve our magic power. Then do as you wish. Wang Yuechuan nodded. I'll change my clothes and go out. When Wang Yuechuan entered the room, Professor Chui Fo sneered. He had accumulated enough magic power to launch a certain spell in the Book of the Dead that he had hidden. As for Wang Yuechuan, after these few magic power improvements, his trust in Chui Fo had obviously increased a lot. His vigilance was not so strong. Christmas is such an important festival. How can I not? Professor Chui Fo sneered in a low voice. I even prepared a pretty good Christmas gift for myself. Since number 18 said that the mission had failed and asked Taisetsu to play by himself, Taisetsu hadn't seen number 18. Of course, he could roughly feel number 18's location, but he felt that the big sister probably didn't want to see anyone since only one day had passed, so he simply returned to the club. Luochio didn't seem to be unhappy about the failure of this mission. But in Taisetsu's view, Luochio and the young man he met in Luo village were still the same, although they were now in a master-servant relationship. Christmas Eve? I don't know. Boss Luo was fiddling with something in the study. At this time, the maid and Taisetsu were drinking tea at this moment. Speaking of the traditional festival of the Western world, Taisetsu shook his head and said, "Didn't the boss tell you? I've spent most of the last 10 years in a cell. Except for the Mid-Autumn Festival and the Spring Festival, what is there to celebrate? Not to mention Christmas. Speaking of which, you should be a foreigner, right? How do you celebrate it?" Taisetsu looked at Mississippi Maid curiously. Although she was drinking tea, as the exclusive servant of the master, Mississippi Maid just stood from beginning to end, holding an exquisite teapot in her hand. Actually, it's almost impossible to celebrate it there. Yu smiled and said, "In Russia, it's New Year's Eve. Of course, there is also Christmas, but it's different from the traditional December 25th. Taisetsu was quite interested. So strange? Tell me about it. There is a so-called Red Coat Santa Claus at Christmas. As for Russia, there is actually a similar image." Yu recalled and said, "But it's called Red Coat Santa Claus, and Miss Shui as an assistant to send gifts together. The Christmas tree is also called a New Year tree." Taisetsu listened to some different cultures and finally asked curiously, "Since it's not, why did you put so much effort into it, as if you were looking forward to it?" Yu said softly, "Because this is the first Christmas Eve that Yu is accompanying the master." Damn, he was stuffed with a mouthful of dog food. Taisetsu secretly shook his head. He felt that it was more suitable for him to go out and wander. "Are you talking about something happy?" Luochio's voice suddenly came. He slowly walked out, but he was holding many big and small boxes in his hands. These boxes were beautifully packaged and couldn't help but look forward to it. Mississippi Maid quickly came forward and shared the burden with Luochio. "Nothing, just casually chatting." Taisetsu shook his head and also helped, then asked, "Boss, what are so many gifts for?" Luochio said softly, "Of course, it's for my customers." Taisetsu was stunned and asked subconsciously, "So many?" Chapter 682. When he woke up, the lights in the hotel room were not turned off yet. Lu Zixing slept like this all night. Although it was already daytime outside, and it was a rare good weather, the lights were still on in the room where all the curtains were closed. It would be brighter after all. Looking at the time, it was almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Lu Zixing didn't expect himself to be so tired that he directly missed lunchtime. At this time, he was hungry. He quickly got up and took a shower. Finally, he shaved off the fibrous roots that grew in the past few days. He couldn't change his clothes, but he thought it was good to clean himself up. The wound on his ear that was broken last night had solidified into a large piece again. Lu Zixing looked at it and shook his head. He felt that it was more suitable without the ear on this side. If he had ears, he wouldn't have been addicted to gambling all these years. Since he couldn't listen to his mother and wife's advice in the past, it was better not to have them. Now that he didn't have them, he couldn't seem to hear them anymore. He thought about what to do today. He quickly tidied himself up, put on his hat again, paid the bill, and left the hotel. The uncle who was reading the newspaper at the front desk was attentively chatting with a woman wearing a skirt and coat. Seeing that Lu Zixing was about to pay the bill, he wasn't very enthusiastic. He just asked Lu Zixing to put the money at the front desk. Lu Zixing didn't mind. He just glanced at this woman and felt that with this woman's beauty, She seemed to be worthy of the word stunning. No wonder the owner of this hotel was so eager. It was just that he used to be addicted to gambling, so he didn't care much about women, or he didn't have much interest in them. Now that his life was turned upside down, it was even more impossible to have much interest. Instead, he felt like he had seen through the world like an outsider. He pushed the door open and walked out. He could only vaguely hear the boss still saying attentively, "Miss Blackwater, today is Christmas Eve. Are you free tonight?" Although they were going to the tallest building in the center of the city, there was still a lot of time before Purple Star's time, so she directly told Zhu Feng that he didn't need to rush. Before that, he could go around. She knew how this youth felt. She also saw some of the young clansmen who had just evolved into demons. Purple Star felt that as a newly born monster, one should always be free and unrestrained. Although she was optimistic about Zhu Feng's future, his potential had been limited. However, this did not prevent the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan from forming a good relationship with Zhu Feng. There were countless monks and lamas on the plateau, and the Greedy Wolf tribe had lived on the plateau for a long time, so they naturally came into contact with them. Over the years, they had also been influenced by Buddhism to a certain extent, and at the level of the Purple Star young master, who was also the tribe's priest, they naturally believed in reincarnation. Fate arises and perishes. Impermanence exists. What is this? The bicycle stopped in front of the square on one side. Seeing Zhu Feng coming over with 2 hot dishes, Zixing asked curiously. "Bomb the big squid. It's explosive." Windchaser gave one to Purple Star. Purple Star also saw Windchaser's little trick just now. Taking advantage of the fact that the owner of the stall was not paying attention, Windchaser quickly stole 2 servings. It seemed that he had become accustomed to this kind of thing and was very skilled at it. Purple Star shook her head, but she did not take it. She said indifferently, "You can send it back." Zhu Feng was startled, thinking that his behavior probably did not escape Purple Star's eyes. She was so beautiful and she had a noble temperament. She even casually pointed out high-level technique. "I'm afraid that she is at least from a rich clan in the demon realm. I will return the money in a few days." Zhu Feng's face turned red. He was at a loss, but his eyes were full of desire. "Wolves are proud, remember that." Purple Star smiled lightly. Just now, she took the food. It was a bit like a teacher to a student. "I will double it." Zhu Feng was not the type of person who blindly felt guilty and did not know how to be free and easy. At this moment, he chuckled, but he was already eating the hot food in his hand. Purple Star smiled and said nothing. There was cause and effect. Today, Zhu Feng stole something here, and he would return it double in the future. It was a karma, so it was naturally good. This little ground wolf could understand so quickly. It seemed that he had the help of the heavens. He knew how to understand karma. Although he may not be aware of it himself, it was enough to show that his Buddhist heart was very high. Suddenly, her heart moved. Although the ground wolf bloodline was only the lowest bloodline of the wolf clan, Zhu Feng was very good at understanding cultivation technique. This time, after she found her subordinates and went to the Penglai conference, it was better to come here on the way back, and bring him back to the clan to train him well. Although it was impossible for him to go further than a great demon, in today's age of Dharma ending, a great demon could be considered as the second best combat power. For a great demon clan, he was already the mainstay. It was not that the clan did not accept the lower bloodline before. Even the plateau where the Greedy Wolf clan was located now, because of the decline of the Greedy Wolf clan, there were a large number of slaves of the lower clans. Thinking about it, Purple Star suddenly asked softly, "Zhu Feng, you said that you have no parents and have been crying. How long have you lived in this city?" "About 10 years. Zhu Feng replied without thinking. Purple Star asked, "Then have you ever thought about leaving this city?" Zhu Feng was stunned. He raised his head and looked at Purple Star. He said blankly, "Leave this place?" Purple Star smiled and said, I was born in the plateau. There is a big pulse there. The human government rarely manages there. In addition, there are few people there. As a demon, there are naturally fewer scruples. Naturally, it is more convenient for you to grow. Why don't you give it a try? Plateau, mountains, and water. When a wolf enters such an environment, it is like a dragon entering the sea. Perhaps it was just his nature to chase after this environment. When he suddenly heard Juefeng, he was already fascinated. He knew that Purple Star was inviting him. Although he didn't know how to communicate with the female he liked, it didn't mean that he couldn't walk. Juefeng shook his head in the end. Purple Star had a trace of ancient style. Juefeng had been struggling to talk. At this time, he muttered to himself, although the plateau is good, it is not my hometown. Naturally, there were things that made him more concerned here. Purple Star was not too disappointed. She smiled slightly and did not continue this topic. She just tasted the big bombing squid in her hand and put it down. As a wolf, she naturally did not avoid meat. It was just that this food had too many useless things added by humans, so she just tasted it. Juefeng? Not far away, a teenager who looked like a high school student waved his arm at this moment, then walked over quickly. Beside him was another girl of similar age. Big brother! Juefeng stood up suddenly. It was Emo Xiaofei. Emo Xiaofei saw that he was still respectful like a little adult, so he couldn't help but laugh. I told you not to be like this. Huh, this is? She is my friend. Juefeng glanced at Purple Star subconsciously, but he saw that she was frowning slightly, so he did not reveal her name. Is that so? Emo Xiaofei rubbed his chin, looking at Juefeng with a meaningful look, and dragged out his tone. Juefeng hurriedly said, Big brother, it's not what you think. Emo Xiaofei spread his palms and said, I'm not thinking of anything. Xiaofei, is this the friend you often talk about? The girl next to Emo Xiaofei asked curiously at this time. Emo Xiaofei smiled and said, Yes, I recently met a few friends. I'll introduce you to them when you have time. By the way, Juefeng, where are you going? Juefeng thought for a while and finally said, I haven't decided yet. Emo Xiaofei continued to rub his chin, and then glanced at the girl next to him. She was the class monitor of her class. Seeing that she just smiled knowingly, he said directly, Do you want to watch a movie together? I also have some questions for you. Juefeng hesitated and looked at Purple Star again. Seeing Juefeng in a dilemma, Purple Star said generously, You decide. Okay then. Big brother. Juefeng made a decision, and then his face changed slightly. I don't have money. Ha ha. Emo Xiaofei laughed. It's not a big deal. Then let's go. After watching the movie, we can have a meal later. With that said, Emo Xiaofei put his arm around Juefeng's shoulder and walked a few steps forward. But after the meal, we will have free time. I say, Juefeng, no wonder I haven't seen you these days. It turns out that you are chasing a girl. No, it's not what you think. Juefeng still blushed. If this was not his benefactor and big brother, he would have pounced on him. Chapter 683. On the way to the cinema, Emo Xiaofei and Juefeng walked in front, while Zixing and the class monitor followed behind them. The class monitor was a gentle person. Zixing was the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan, so she naturally had no problem in conversing. Big brother, don't you need to cultivate today? Juefeng asked curiously. In the past, Emo Xiaofei basically went back to cultivate after class, but today he didn't. Instead, he went out shopping in his school uniform. Emo Xiaofei said bitterly, I asked for leave a week in advance. Otherwise, I might not be able to come out. It was said that he was guided by Kelowna Shinryu to cultivate as a student. This was probably the qualification that all the demons in the demon realm would fight for. Juefeng naturally thought of it, but he only felt lucky for Emo Xiaofei. Well, Lord Long is indeed a bit strict. But I haven't seen Lord Long recently. Is she okay? Long Shiruo repeatedly asked Emo Xiaofei not to disclose her current situation. Emo Xiaofei knew how powerful she was, so he naturally wouldn't say much. She's okay. She went out to pick herbs. It will take some time before she comes back. I've been guided by Little Lord Long recently. Xuefeng nodded. He knew Little Lord Long and had seen him once, but he didn't know where he came from. By the way, big brother, you just said that you have something to ask me. What is it? Emo Xiaofei took out the painting of the wolf warrior's soul artist from his school bag and said helplessly, Have you seen the guy on it recently? The teacher asked me to find this guy as a form of cultivation. Xuefeng took the painting and looked at it carefully. Obviously, he would not hesitate to help Emo Xiaofei. Emo Xiaofei looked at the sky. You took it upside down. Xuefeng, this painting is so unique. Sorry, big brother, I haven't seen it before, but I will pay more attention. Emo Xiaofei shook his head and put away the painting, saying with a smile, Well, let me know if you have any news. It doesn't matter if you don't. Of course, Emo Xiaofei had been quietly galloping in the night sky of this city these past few days. Every night, he was half dead tired. Even after using all his abilities, he still couldn't find anyone who had anything to do with the Wolf Clan young lord in the painting. If it weren't for the 2 soldiers in the hospital who insisted that they could sense that the young master was in this city, Emo Xiaofei would have given up. Then, big brother, do you have any other information about this guy? What's his name? Xuefeng asked. Emo Xiaofei pondered for a moment before he shook his head. This involved the internal affairs of the greedy wolf tribe. There might even be some conflict. In his opinion, Xuefeng was just a child. Even though he was older, it was still inappropriate for him to come into contact with such matters. I'm just following my teacher's instructions and looking for this guy. Xuefeng had been walking in the city. Emo Xiaofei just wanted to try his luck, so he didn't take it seriously. Let's line up and buy a ticket. You guys wait here. Emo Xiaofei smiled and patted Xuefeng on the shoulder, asking Xuefeng to wait. Only then did Zixing have time to talk to Xuefeng alone. She looked at Xuefeng and frowned. Are these 2 humans really your friends? Xuefeng didn't hear the faint displeasure in Zixing's words and said casually, Yes. Big brother Emo Xiaofei is the most respected person in my life. If it weren't for him, I would have died long ago. His life-saving grace is like my second parent. Zixing finally frowned. You mean he already knows your identity as a monster? This human? Xuefeng said matter-of-factly. Yes, what's so strange about it? Big brother Xiaofei is also Lord Long's disciple. Shoo, but don't tell anyone. Not many people know about this. Long Shiruo naturally didn't acknowledge such a thing as a disciple, but in Xuefeng's view, there seemed to be no difference between a student and a disciple. But Zixing didn't think so. What kind of existence was the Dragon King? The most powerful being in Kelowna, Shinryu, was at the top of the monster realm. He set the rules of both the human and monster realms. None of the monsters dared to disobey. Only those monsters in remote places dared to do something against the rules, but they only dared to do it secretly and didn't dare to go too far. The Dragon King's disciple. His identity was even more noble than her, young Master Tan Lang. But this was clearly a human being. The Monster Clan's Dragon King accepted a human as his disciple? Even with Zixing's knowledge, she was stunned at this time. She naturally had a way to observe people's facial expressions. Xuefeng's words were easy to see that he wasn't lying. Although she still didn't believe it in her heart and felt that there were still many unknown mysteries, it was related to the Dragon King's private affairs, so it was not appropriate to ask. Thinking that she was the leader of a monster clan and was also a priest, she naturally had to be more cautious than ordinary monsters in the monster realm. But the Dragon King's disciple suddenly appeared. Was it not a coincidence? Speaking of which, she used the Tan Lang's descent that day, and the Tan Lang star appeared. How could such a big movement not attract the Dragon King's attention? Perhaps the Dragon King had already discovered her, so he sent this disciple out to investigate? It was just that she was seriously injured and had regressed to her current appearance. Tanlang was still not moving now. Even the Dragon King might not be able to find out for a while. Maybe she could contact the Dragon King's disciple in private. She didn't want to involve the Kelowna Shinryu in this matter. After all, it would damage the reputation of the Tanlang clan. But if she really met him, she could only take advantage of the situation. Phew! That was close. There were almost no seats. Mo Xiaofei and the class monitors squeezed out of the crowd and handed the tickets to Xuefeng. Xuefeng took it with one hand. Zixing, on the other hand, was a little reserved. She took it from Mo Xiaofei with both hands and said seriously, "Master Mo, thank you very much." Mo Xiaofei was taken aback. "What do you mean by master? Have you learned the same thing as wind chasing wolf? Well, let's not talk about this first. Let's go in. It's about to start." Zixing nodded. If it was a monster, they could still sense the monster power and know the depth. If it was a guy from Kelowna who practiced Taoism, he could also distinguish the opponent's Taoist power. The problem was that Mo Xiaofei didn't have any monster power or Taoist power. How could he become the Dragon King's disciple? It's impossible for others to predict what that lord will do. Zixing shook her head slightly and followed the others into the movie room silently. Speaking of which, as the young master of the Tanlang clan, although she didn't lack luxurious clothes and food and lived a carefree life, it was the first time for her to experience entertainment in the human world. "By the way, brother, what movie are we watching?" "Pen Spirit." Mo Xiaofei smiled and said, "It's a popular thriller recently. He committed murder, disturbing public places, creating panic, and so on. Finally, he was sentenced to death naturally and was now on probation. It was said that the aid lawyer wanted to use the prisoner's mental problem as a reason, but the prisoner took the initiative to admit it. The prisoners on probation were naturally different from the cells where ordinary prisoners lived. Most of the prisoners waiting for the death penalty tended to be irritable, emotional, or depressed, but a prisoner on death row in a certain cabin was much calmer than others. He was a blind prisoner on death row. It was said that he killed his girlfriend and hid her body at home. No one would argue with a prisoner on death row, not to mention this guy was more like a madman, because he was always alone in the cell, opening his hands and humming an unknown tune while dancing. It was as if his hand was holding a beloved woman. He was probably crazy. It was the same today. The patrolling prison guards were already used to it. The prison guards just planned to get off work early to meet their girlfriends and then spend an unforgettable night together. They wouldn't look carefully and just rushed past. Therefore, the prison guards didn't notice that there was a beautifully wrapped box on the bed of this crazy death row inmate. Guiyushua stopped humming and smiled slightly. Then, he touched the wall and sat down by the bed. His hand seemed to have touched something. He touched it a few times. It should be something like a box, but it was a little light. He continued to explore. It looked like a packaging box, and it was still tied with a ribbon. He felt a little strange, so he shook it gently with his hand. It seemed to be empty, and there was nothing inside, so he simply opened it. He couldn't see, but if he could see, he would know that there was a flash of light when the gift box was opened. Finally, Guiyushua smelled a strong fragrance. The fragrance of eggplant with garlic sauce. It was the fragrance in his memory. Thank you, thank you. Chapter 684. Although it was indeed the first time Zixing came to the cinema of the human world to watch a movie, it did not mean that she did not know how the movie was produced. She just retained a trace of the inherent concept of the monster. If it was not necessary, she would try not to come into contact with the civilization of the human world, because it was the rise of this civilization that caused this great change in the environment, which was a major factor in the decline of the monster race today. However, not to mention the superior monster race like Zixing, even ordinary monsters rarely came to the theater, let alone a thriller that was simply child's play for the monsters. No matter how scary the movie was, could it be compared to the experience of the monsters themselves? No matter how realistic the special effects were, it could not be compared to the experience of the monsters who walked in the gap between the yin and yang. However, looking at Xuefeng's expectant look, Zixing did not say anything. At this time, she looked at Xuefeng with the feeling of looking at a junior, and there was also a kind of affection born from kindness. In general, it was probably a little doting from an elder to a junior. However, Zixing's attention was more on Mo Xiaofei at this time. How could an ordinary person make the Dragon King want to accept him as a disciple? She didn't know what was so special about him. It's about to start. The class monitor brought by Mo Xiaofei looked slightly nervous and expectant at this moment. Her beautiful big eyes stared at the screen without blinking, as if she didn't want to miss a minute and a second. This movie about the pen spirit was not made in China, so it was exempt from many of the local standards and regulations. A good ghost-themed movie would eventually turn into an ambiguous mystery film, and it would have to prove that the human heart was like a ghost to pass the censors of a certain government. But despite this, the content was extremely scary. It was rumored that when it was released abroad, there was news that viewers were scared to death on the spot. It became a hot topic for a while, as if there was a speculator behind it. It reminded people of another Japanese movie series that scared many people to death more than 10 years ago. From the very beginning, the entire venue was shrouded in a tense and silent atmosphere. Before this, many people had already read the movie reviews online and knew the direction of the story and the relationship between the characters. No matter how horrible the people who had seen it said it was, they would not watch it a second time. Therefore, they were already mentally prepared. But in the end, they were still pulled into a state of panic by the dubbing that appeared at the beginning. Her control of the atmosphere was quite good. Purple Star, who was watching a movie for the first time, was able to analyze the meaning of each scene and the information given by it. As the priest of the Greedy Wolf clan, she originally needed to deal with the constellations of the heavens. It was naturally easier for her to see through the essence of things. In addition, she was in the highlands, and under the influence of Buddhism, she was able to understand the relationship between cause and effect. Therefore, in Purple Star's eyes, those one-leaf descriptions were nothing special. Unconsciously, Purple Star simply gave up on analyzing the final direction of the story and simply experienced the feeling of watching a movie as a viewer. Otherwise, it would be too boring. There was very little dialogue between the characters in this movie. Most of the scenes were silent. The shooting environment was quite good. It took place in a remote village that seemed to be a paradise. The first 10 minutes or so could even be described as a landscape documentary. Knowing that a sudden rainstorm was coming, the heroine was trapped in the rented house and accidentally found the ink, paper, and ink stone in the attic. When the heroine grabbed the brush out of boredom and wrote on the rice paper pressed by the stone, a faint palm seemed to stretch out from the void, but it was tightly clasped between the heroine's fingers, waving the brush with her. At this time, strange music suddenly sounded, tugging at everyone's heartstrings. However, the heroine seemed to be unaware of her palm being clasped by something, but there was a strange smile on her face. When the movie came to this point, Purple Star suddenly frowned. Her lips moved slightly, and she muttered, "This is the supporting spirit? How can an ordinary human movie have such a demonstration of the supporting spirit technique? Looking at the pattern carved by the tip of the brush, it doesn't make sense at first glance, but when I think about it carefully, it is actually so mysterious." The more surprised she was, the more focused her eyes became, as if something was attracting her. Gradually, all her attention was attracted, as if she was being pulled out of her body without realizing it. However, she was also a sacrifice after all. At this time, even if she was seriously injured and her strength had probably regressed, there was still a warning in her soul. She had begun to recover from this kind of pull. Wake up, wake up! Zixing's gaze returned. Just as she was about to ponder about the details of this pulling force, she suddenly realized that something was wrong. At this time, she was no longer in a chair in a theater, and the surrounding environment was not dark. Instead, it was a bright and beautiful day. In front of her, there was a kind woman looking at her with an anxious expression. Purple Star's lips moved slightly, but she found that she was lying on a quilt, surrounded by wooden beams. She sat up abruptly, only to find that she was not lying on a bed, but just a thick quilt on a tatame. Next to her was a short cabinet used for women's dressing. There was a bronze mirror on it, and the figure reflected on it also showed a slightly surprised expression at this time. Purple Star frowned. The reflection on this bronze mirror was her, but it was not her original appearance. At this time, the woman next to her was even more worried. Miss Tsukihime, are you okay? Don't scare me. Tsukihime. Kondo Tsukihime? A kind of information about this body suddenly emerged in Purple Star's mind. Kondo Tsukihime, the young lady of Maple City's main family. This is the world in the movie? But how did I get involved in such a strange place? Is it just me, or does everyone in the movie theater have the same experience? Could it be related to the painting of Fuji that appeared in the movie? Wang Yuechuan was from the provincial bureau, and this city was not the provincial capital. It was just an ordinary prefecture-level city, but its economic development had always been among the best. Even so, a provincial bureau official like Wang Yuechuan, who was also a special investigator, would naturally be one level higher than him. He also had a lot of privileges. The request to enter the morgue naturally would not be blocked much. As for bringing along a foreign old man outside the system, although it was a little troublesome, it was not too difficult. After all, ordinary people would come in and out of this kind of place where the bodies of innocent people were placed for a long time, the family members or friends of the deceased who came to claim the body. Professor Chui Fo came in with Wang Yuechuan with a similar identity. Of course, it was a place of discipline after all. Even if they came in a relaxed manner, Wang Yuechuan and Professor Chui Fo were still accompanied by police officers who were responsible for guarding the morgue. Convenience. It was just a simplified operation under the program. Things that should be written in the file still needed to be written in the file. The police officer was in his 50s and was about to retire, but his hair was almost bald, and his lips were slightly purple. His body did not seem to be healthy. Officer Wang, which cabinet do you want to open? The old police officer looked at Wang Yuechuan at this time and asked directly, preparing to open the refrigerator cabinet where the body was placed. Wang Yuechuan glanced at Professor Chui Fo. As new mages, these two came in and constantly transformed the nether spirits into the source of magic power through mysterious rituals. Now they could easily sense the existence of the nether spirit. Although they couldn't observe directly without the help of the ritual circle, the familiar feeling couldn't be concealed. Furthermore, the morgue was filled with an eerie atmosphere, and the chill was suffocating. The spirits that remained in the morgue were definitely not something that could be compared to the ancient mass graves. Professor Chui Fo nodded at this time, looked at the old police officer, and said slowly, "Please open one." This should be Wang Yuechuan's order, but it was this strange old man. The old police officer was stunned at the moment, but when he met the strange old man's eyes, he suddenly lost his mind. His eyes gradually became empty. At this moment, Professor Chui Fo's eyes seemed to flash with starlight, but it disappeared. It was just the theory in the Book of the Dead, plus some of his own reasoning and experiments, which gave birth to a hypnotic ability. Of course, the general hypnotist needed to make a variety of preparations, both open and covert, and various arrangements. He also needed the other party's body to be completely relaxed and matched with drugs to have a chance to succeed. But these were not troublesome for people who controlled magic power. Okay. The old policeman nodded in a daze and pulled out a set of keys. He chose one and opened a cold cabinet. Then, he pulled it out. Corpse wrapped in a black bag was pulled out just like that. Wisps of cold air from the freezer lingered around it. The old police officer then opened the zipper of the bag, only to see a cracked skull with a distorted face. It was probably not caused by a car accident. Professor Chui Fo glanced at it and felt a shock in his stomach. He quickly said, "Don't open it." Even if he had begun to consider himself as an extraordinaire, how could his mentality become extraordinary all of a sudden? Looking at Professor Chui Fo's unbearable appearance, Wang Yuechuan didn't say a word. "You go out. When you wake up, just remember that we didn't recognize you, so we left early in the morning." Professor Chui Fo waved his hand at this time and commanded the old police officer directly, "Also, switch out the surveillance video during the time when no one was around yesterday, and then cover the time when we were there. The time will be before 12 o'clock tonight." Tonight was Christmas Eve, and it was very lively outside. Those young officers wanted to get off work early. Unless they still had another task, such as patrolmen and traffic police who had to be on duty, the rest didn't have much mood to work, let alone pick this time to identify the corpse. After half an hour, it would be time to get off work. Even if someone broke in to identify the corpse, they would not accept it. They had to wait until tomorrow morning. Therefore, in just one night, the two of them could do whatever they wanted in the morgue. "Let's start," Wang Yuechuan said faintly at this time. Professor Chui Fo also began to take out various crystals to fiddle with the ritual array and began to fiddle silently. As for the old police officer, after closing the door and leaving, he sat in the office outside and fell asleep directly on the table. However, at this time, a trace of black mist began to gather behind the old police officer, and then gradually turned into a figure in a black robe, making a low and hoarse laugh. It was Black Soul number 18, who had failed a mission, but always enjoyed the game he had been playing. Sir Ma didn't play Minesweeper in his office, but looked at the time on the wall clock. As a devoted police officer, he hardly looked forward to getting off work as he did today. Of course, it was not like the group of young guys outside because it was Christmas Eve, because it was the big day of the appointment, although he did have an appointment with his wife, Madame Ma, to eat at a restaurant outside. However, Sir Ma invited his wife to dinner not because of the festival, but to celebrate something. That was, Mrs. Ma gave birth to a pearl at an old age. She actually sent a good news. The last time Sir Ma was a father was 20 years ago. He didn't expect to be able to have a child at this age. He was even more excited than when he was a father for the first time. It was just that Mrs. Ma didn't like to be publicized, so this matter wasn't widely known. She just planned to wait until her belly was big and couldn't hide it anymore. "Tsk tisk, I'm still as strong as before." Officer Ma smirked in the office alone, calculating the time. Shouldn't it be the last few days on the Bayou cruise ship during the Golden Week? Thinking of the 2 nights on the Bayou cruise ship, which was extremely firm and powerful as if it had the help of God, Sir Ma subconsciously felt his legs go soft again, and his heart still had a lingering fear. He couldn't help but rub his chin and said in a strange tone, "So, I have to thank Renziling, this brat? Forget it, maybe I'll be blackmailed by this brat. But those oysters, where did they get them? So fierce." Just as he was letting his imagination run wild, the office door opened. It was Sir Ma's head horse, Lin Feng. "Sir Ma, I just saw Officer Wang." "What? Officer Wang? Which Officer Wang?" Ma Haud was stunned and asked subconsciously. "Wang Yuechuan." Lin Feng blinked and said, "That special envoy who looks awesome. You can't have forgotten, right?" "That guy." Ma Haud nodded, but since the case of the cram school last time was temporarily closed, there was almost no trace of him. He was mysterious, and no one knew what he was doing. Why did he come back at this time? Sure enough, he's single. I heard that he seemed to have gone through the formalities, and then went to the morgue. Lin Feng shrugged. It seems that he also brought someone there. It's probably to claim the corpse or something. I'm not too sure. Chapter 685. As the master of this land, the Kondo family naturally had supreme power. However, in the entire Izumo country, there were many families like the Kondo family, and above them were generations of noble families and even the country's monarch. However, the head of the Kondo family, Kondo Noritsune, was also a person who worked hard. Under his management, the fief also showed signs of prosperity. It was a pity that Kondo Noritsune had no descendants. Even among all the direct blood relatives in the entire family, no male was born. How could a city lord not have a direct descendant? But there really wasn't. What could Kondo Noritsune do? He also sighed every day, feeling extremely desperate. Later, he had no choice but to listen to the advice of his retainer counselor. He adopted his brother's only daughter from his deceased brother. When this daughter grew up, she would choose a husband and give birth to a child. This was the origin of Kondo Tsuheim. It was also something that Zixing had inquired about in the past 2 days. How should I put it? Zixing had already determined that this was the world in the movie, but unfortunately, she didn't see any introduction of this movie. Naturally, she didn't know the subsequent plot. What she knew was only some information that was given at the beginning of the movie. Even Kondo Tsuheim's identity at this moment was explored by herself. Her soul being dragged into this illusory world was something Purple Star had never heard of before. She only felt as if there was a pair of eyes observing her every move at all times, making it impossible for her to calm down for even a moment. If it weren't for the fact that the greedy wolf couldn't be awakened, even if she was pulled into this strange virtual world, how could she not have the slightest resistance? She just didn't know if in addition to herself, Zhuifeng and the humans in the movie theater, as well as the disciple of the Dragon Lord, were also somewhere in this virtual world at this time and then transformed into someone. White rice, grilled fish, miso soup, and some scattered pickles. Although the amount was small, a lot of utensils were used. Kondo Tsuheim's body had been weak since she was a child, and she had no strength at all. If she didn't eat something, Zixing was afraid that she wouldn't be able to walk properly. And Haruko, eat a few more servings of meat for dinner. Zixing ate and suddenly ordered the nanny who had been taking care of her. Although this was an imaginary world, the food here was not polluted at all, and the taste was not inferior to the food she had in the highlands. Princess Ji had always been frail and sickly since she was young. She would vomit whenever she came into contact with a bit of meat. It was rare for her to have such a large increase in her appetite these past 2 days. Her complexion gradually became rosy. Aunt Chunzi confidently and joyfully agreed. When will father come back? Zixing put down her chopsticks and put her hands on her legs, as she looked at Chunzi and asked slowly. She was the young master of a clan, and she was also the greedy wolf shaman. Naturally, she was impeccable in terms of bearing. Some of the customs and manners here could be seen at a glance. Not only was she able to imitate them beautifully, but she was even more noble and calm than the former Kondo Yuheim. Ever since Princess Ji woke up that day, the changes in her eyes couldn't be hidden from Chunzi, who had been taking care of her. Although he had some doubts in his heart, the Yun country had a strict hierarchy. How could a servant dare to question his master? Hearing this, Chunzi put his hands on the ground and clasped his forehead. He quickly said, "Master is patrolling the low-level villages. The return date is set around the early part of the frost month. There should be 25 or 26 days left." "Have you heard of Unripe Rice Village?" Zixing asked abruptly. "Unripe Rice Village?" Chunzi pondered for a moment and then replied, "It should be near the foot of Feimin Mountain. I have only heard of it but have never been there." "Well, you get ready." Zixing thought for a while and said, "Call some attendants. I will go to Feimin Mountain tomorrow and look for Unripe Rice Village." This. Chun-Zi was shocked and said, Princess Ji, you can't do that. How can you leave the city at will? I heard that there was a group of samurai retainers and deserters from the An-E kingdom a month ago. They turned into refugees and rushed into the Yun country to loot everywhere. It is said that there is a powerful demon dog nearby. It is really dangerous. There is no need to say more. I have made up my mind. Zixing said in a clear voice, Do you dare to disobey my orders? Chun-Zi doesn't dare. She raised her head in horror with a look of fear on her face. Then, she lowered her head again and moved her knees on the ground. After kneeling a little, she stepped out of the door and didn't dare to raise her head. Unripe Rice Village is really there. Zixing muttered to herself at this time, If I want to find out why I came to this unreal land, I am afraid the only way is to find out the truth behind the Fuji. Now that my demon beast power is gone, and my body is weak, I can only rely on the power of the Kondo family. Fortunately, it is a Princess Ji who is banned. If I become an ordinary person in the outer city, I am afraid I can't do anything. A few months later, a samurai with a long sword and a white-robed monk with a staff were chasing in the forest at this time. In the forest, a figure was rapidly leaping forward on the branches. It had a head of long white hair, long erect ears, dark green eyes, and a long tail. Xuefeng looked back at the guys chasing behind him with some annoyance. Since he opened his eyes, he saw these guys roaring and attacking him, saying that they were asking for the demon beast so that they could exchange it for merits. Ask for my ass. I am not going to change my name. My name is Xuefeng, okay? Who the hell knows who the Inuyasha you guys are asking for is? Also, the red robe on this body is really awkward. However, the strength of this body is not inferior to my previous self. Even the demon beast power seems to be a little higher. Although I don't know why I became like this while watching a movie, at least I am still a demon beast. It's just that I changed from a wolf demon beast to a dog demon beast. If you guys chase me again, don't blame me for being rude. Xuefeng turned his head and yelled at the samurai who roared the most fiercely. Inuyasha, I, Jizaburo Amakusa, will take you down today. Aha! Then don't blame me for being rude. Although he had always abided by the rules of Lord Long, not to harm humans without authorization and cause chaos in this damn place, it was not like the original place. Xuefeng was not the kind of person who would stand up straight after being beaten. The other party was attacking him, yet he was not allowed to fight back. Was he out of his mind? Soul-chasing Iron Claw. Xuefeng suddenly turned around and waved his palm toward the samurai at the front. He flew down from the big tree. The sharp nails on his fingers had scarlet light. He directly clawed a terrible wound on the samurai's shoulder. Be careful. This half-demon beast is going to attack and show his ferocity. The only monk looked dignified at this time. He put his hands together as if he was chanting a spell. This body called Inuyasha was a little higher than his demon beast power. In the past, Xuefeng was besieged by a group of wild demons, but he could not stop until he was dead, let alone now. In the forest, the half-demon beast who replaced him waved his claws. He did not use the long sword that was originally on his waist. He killed the group of samurai and monks who came to ask for him. After a while, they all fell to the ground with serious injuries. They could only be slaughtered. It was easy to kill these guys further, but first, he had to figure out what the hell this place was. In addition, since he was here, maybe Brother Xiaofei and Zixing would be here too. Inuyasha, kill me if you want. The samurai leader was quite stubborn. Xuefeng frowned. He smashed the man's front teeth with a punch and lifted him up. Tell me what I ask you. If you don't tell me, I will. He thought about it and did not think of any threat, so he simply said, I will shave all your hair and eyebrows. Xuefeng did not think about what effect it would have. Unexpectedly, the samurai's face was pale at this time. He trembled and said in horror, No. I will tell you everything. Hey, are people here afraid of shaving their heads? Where is this place? Zhuifeng was too lazy to ask and asked directly. This is Dharma Gate Mountain, Dharma Gate Mountain. Okay, thank you, uncle. It is my honor to be able to help you, samurai master. Wasn't it? Which of those samurai were not fierce? They would be angry if they were offended a little. Such an amiable samurai master was rare and in such a rural place. He was probably a wandering samurai or a descendant of a samurai who had no fief of his own. Thinking about it, the tenant farmer raised his head quietly and found that the young samurai had disappeared. He could not help but feel surprised. But he didn't know that the samurai master was still silently watching him at this time, just that he was in the sky. Mo Xiaofei touched the hairstyle that could make him feel despair. His body floated freely in the sky. He watched the uncle who had just asked for directions gradually go away. He frowned. It seems that it's time travel, the legendary soul travel. And it's the movie world of the pen spirit that I'm watching? Mo Xiaofei had superpowers, and his teacher was the true dragon of China. He had seen more monsters, and there was also the mysterious club boss. Naturally, Mo Xiaofei's ability to accept things was incomparable. Well, although my body has changed, my ability doesn't seem to be affected at all. Mo Xiaofei continued to rub his chin. In the past, using superpowers put a huge burden on the body. Although I don't have this concern later, I still feel that my body can't bear it when I use it to the limit. I don't feel anything here. Is it because this body is stronger than mine? It doesn't seem to be the reason. Mo Xiaofei was still at the stage of lacking knowledge about superpowers. He didn't know how shocking it was that he could easily whip 2 advanced werewolf warriors to the ground. I don't know what the class leader is doing now. Thinking that the class leader was just an ordinary girl, Mo Xiaofei was very anxious about what kind of dangers she would encounter in this strange and mysterious world, but he had no clue at this time and didn't know where to start. No, if this is really the Pen Spirits movie world, and the class leader is involved, she might go to that village. This was probably the benefit of telekinesis, the enhancement of intuition. This is Dharma Gate Mountain, so that village should be nearby. Class leader, wait for me. Boss Luo certainly wasn't the old man in red clothes mentioned by Miss Maid, and she wasn't the assistant, Miss Shui. But sending gifts to passing customers on the eve of Christmas Eve was also a bit of fun. But why do I have to do it in the end? Taisetsu silently followed behind the boss and Miss Maid. For example, when he was in the prison, he sneaked in and put the gift box in front of the death row prisoner's bed. As for the boss and the maid, they were taking a walk outside. The 2 sisters are abroad, so I'll go there later. Send those who are still in the city first. Then, it's our turn. The boss and Miss Maid were discussing the gifting route. Of course, they didn't have to go through such trouble. They could send out hundreds or thousands of gifts at the same time and appear in front of the customers with just a thought. However, it would seem more sincere if he were to deliver it personally. After all, a businessman should put the customer first. The boss stopped on the street, looking at the door of a cinema nearby. Yu Yi looked at the same direction, her neat eyebrows slightly raised. Of course, she also noticed what her master found. Luoqiu thought for a while, suddenly smiled and walked directly into the cinema. Miss Maid and Taisetsu followed all the way. Finally, Boss Luo stopped in front of one of the screening rooms, and pushed the door open and entered. The staff in front of the door didn't notice at all. In the dark screening room, except for the light and shadow on the huge screen and the vibration of the sound system, all the audience was silent. This was not strange. If the movie didn't have any time to pee and the audience was fully immersed in it, there would be nothing strange. It's strange. Why do I feel that these people are a bit abnormal? Taisetsu looked at the audience on the seats, finding that they were all in a daze, as if they had lost their souls. It wasn't that they were fully immersed in the movie, but that they were so quiet as if they had no consciousness at all. They are all right, Luochu said indifferently. They were just temporarily sucked in. When the movie is over, they will naturally return to normal. They will only feel that they have watched a thrilling movie, but their memory will be a bit blurred. Inside? Taisetsu gave a start, subconsciously looking at the movie on the big screen. Boss, you mean inside the movie? Miss Maid said softly. To be exact, it's the imaginary world in the movie. Well, Master, I didn't expect to encounter the broken world fragments here. I don't know who made use of the broken world fragments to create such a feast? Feast? Luochu smiled slightly. If this movie can be continuously shown in all the cinemas in the country, it can be described as a feast. Imaginary world, the broken world fragment. Taisetsu looked at the boss on the left and Miss Maid on the right. He didn't understand but felt it was awesome. Let's go in. At this moment, Boss Luo walked down the stairs in the cinema hall and walked towards the screen, just in time to give a gift to this customer, and there is more than one. Boss Luo's body seemed to pass through the light and shadow, and finally disappeared into the screen. Miss Maid followed closely. When she was about to enter, she suddenly turned back. Let's go, the channel opened by Master is about to close. Chapter 686. The clear blue sky, the fragrance of flowers, and the natural environment presented itself in front of Taisetsu's eyes. Even though the sun was high up in the sky, as long as he was under the shade of the trees, he could feel the coolness. The coolness of the breeze made Daz couldn't help but recall the summer when he was young. It was the same at that time. He didn't want to be like this now. The heat waves were rolling. If he was in the city, it was like a furnace. This was a world that had not been destroyed by modernization, but such a world was, boss, is this really the world in the movie? Even if he had become Onyx Soul, he had seen many means of the club and seen all kinds of extraordinary powers. However, the impact of such a movie world was still extremely shocking for Daz. Luochu was walking slowly in this natural world. He looked around and appeared very calm. To be precise, it is the world on the other side of the window. Window? Luochu pondered for a while and said, in fact, this is my first time here. It might not be appropriate to call it a window, but wouldn't it be better to describe it as a door? Let's call the world we are in the main world or the main world, either is fine. The main thing is to ensure its dominant position. Then, the world on this side can be described as a secondary world. This movie is the passage between the two, which is the door. Taisetsu was shocked. In other words, there are many, many different worlds? Boss, what about the world fragments you mentioned before? In theory, there is only one world. Luochu thought for a while. That was something he learned at the end of the last Golden Week, from his observation of all things when his spirit rose on the island overseas. For example, this subworld is one of the subworlds that split off from the main world, so it became a fragment of the world. This, logically speaking, if it is a fragment, then shouldn't our world be missing something? Taisetsu shook his head. But the continental plates are normal, right? This kind of division is not a physical division. Luochu frowned, as if he was discussing something. According to my current understanding, it should be a division in the time dimension. The secondary world behind this movie was cut from a certain period of history and then split. The extracted fragments would evolve on their own. To be more specific, it was similar to the division of cells. The new cells would grow on their own. Then, the new cells might be reclassified and grow again. Thus, the world is theoretically infinite, and there is no constant number that can be summed up. Taisetsu digested it for a while and suddenly remembered that 18 said not long ago that she would take him to a place suitable for training the power of Zhanlu. Could it be that it is not a brand new world formed by a world fragment? In other words, no matter how many of these subworlds there are, our current world is still the dominant one? Taisetsu thought for a while. Lead. Luochu said casually. If this secondary world is split from the time of our current world, Then our world is indeed the main one. But who knows if our main world is split from some time of our current world? A feeling of insignificance like a drop in the ocean made Taisetsu suddenly feel a chill. Endless worlds, the long river of history. What is the only route? Perhaps there is only the long river of time. Luochio walked in front. This was the last sentence Taisetsu heard in this conversation, because there was clearly a figure in front of him at this moment. The person Boss Luo walked towards. When did this guy appear here? A devilish-looking man in a suit and carrying an old leather suitcase. The man took off his hat at this time, put his hand on his chest, bent down slightly, and smiled. Dear new boss and the beautiful Miss Yu Yi, it is a great honor for both of you to come. Hello, Mr. Erex. Boss Luo also gave a polite greeting. Erex smiled at this time and waved his hand. Under a cherry tree on the grassy hillside, a round table and chairs for tea appeared. Distinguished guest, please come here. Thank you. Luochio nodded. This is Taisetsu, one of my messengers. Taisetsu hurriedly nodded to the man called Erex. Erex's eyes suddenly curved, which was a strange curve that humans could not achieve. At first glance, Taisetsu's heart beat inexplicably. At this time, Jean Lu suddenly hummed, and Taisetsu's nervousness faded away. Erex smiled with a little surprise. Boss, it seems that you have found a very good employee. Congratulations. Erex even pulled out chairs for Boss Luo and the other two. His humble attitude was not inferior to Boss Luo's when facing customers. Thank you, Mr. Erex. Yu Yi smiled slightly and sat down after Luochio sat down. She reached out and touched the table, suddenly saying, Creation? It seems that Mr. Erex is going to dominate this world fragment? Thank you for your words. Erex smiled ambiguously and began to make tea. He even made many exquisite desserts appear on the table out of thin air. It has been a long time since we parted at the lakeside cottage. Erex sat down and said, I miss you so much. I wonder if I've disturbed you this time, boss? Luochio said indifferently, I only do my business. What he meant was that no matter what Erex did outside, the club was still the club, and it had always been the club's position. With that, he looked at Erex again. In addition, I'm interested this time, so I came in to have a look. After all, it's the first time for me to see such a world fragment. Since Erex had delivered a letter for the former boss, he could probably guess when the new boss took office. In such a short time, if he didn't do it on purpose, it was not hard to guess that he didn't encounter any world fragments. It was better to admit it openly. Erex shook his head. Boss, as far as I know, your shop has collected countless world fragments. If you want to browse, you don't have to wait until now, right? Luochio picked up a cookie and smiled without saying a word. It was a lot, but they were all thrown away by the former boss. He was also very helpless. What could he do? The name of this world is Yen Wuyue. Erex didn't mind Boss Luo's silence. As one of the customers, who often dealt with the former boss, he was too used to the boss's face. But the boss did have the capital to do whatever he wanted. Even in the subworld, even if he finally succeeded in gaining control of all the rules of this subworld, the boss of the club was still the same as him. Being able to descend to the endless world and directly gain the right to use the rules of the world, he was a wonderful existence that stood on the endless world. Good world fragment. Luochio nodded, and there was a clear vein between closing and opening his eyes. The number of true souls is not small, and the transmission of 8 million gods. I see, it evolved into a fragment of the world of gods and ghosts. I'm just lucky. Erex smiled faintly. But he was very depressed. The boss had just arrived, and with only a thought, he had basically grasped one of the most important information of this world fragment, but it was much easier than him, who had been managing it for so long. The gap between them wasn't just a little big. Boss, are you sure you just want to visit? Erex still maintained his demeanor. By the way, I'll give you a gift as a return for Christmas. Boss Luo smiled faintly, waving his hand, and the snacks on the table disappeared. Just a small token of my appreciation. Instead, it was replaced by a beautifully wrapped box. Eric's raised his eyebrows. He created things out of nothing, but the boss erased them with a wave of his hand. Obviously, he didn't use the ability of the shop itself, but he had grown to this point. Boss, what kind of freak did you find to inherit it? But Eric suddenly beamed with joy. That's my honor, I can't wait to open this gift box. Even so, Eric's didn't mean to open it. In his opinion, this might not be inferior to Pandora's magic box, right? Then open it. Miss Maid suddenly laughed softly. Eric's just put it away. Leave the surprise for last. Boss, since you're here, can I buy something from you? Of course. Luochu nodded. Eric smiled. Can you help me defeat the 2 local gods in the world of Yanwue? Boss Luo deliberated. Mr. Eric said, defeat? You want me to do my best? No, it's too expensive. Eric shook his head. I said, help me defeat them. Boss, you only need to help me contain one of them. The brother and sister are not my opponents separately, but they are a little better than me when they cooperate. Of course, even so, I'm willing to offer a quarter of the true soul of this fragment world as a reward. Mr. Eric's. Yu Yi said with a faint smile, since there are 2 recognized owners in Yanwue's world, then theoretically speaking, this fragment of the broken world is not exclusive to you. Can you really offer a quarter of it? Although our master just took office not long ago, he can't be bullied like this. Of course. Eric's nodded. Your shop does honest business, how dare I blackmail you? This is my mortgage. If I can't offer a quarter of the true soul in the end, this is part of the compensation. With this, Eric's silently held up the old leather case that he had been carrying and put it in front of Luochu. Miss Maid smiled slightly. It was a look that said, at least you know how to behave. Boss Luo stared at Eric's old leather case and showed a more interested expression. If possible, this case is enough. But since it's a temporary mortgage, it's okay. A quarter of the true soul is indeed enough, even very generous. An ancient parchment scroll slowly unfolded in front of Eric's. Eric seemed to be relieved, and his palm pressed on the contract decisively. The contract was signed. Are you going to do it now? Boss Luo put away the contract. Eric shook his head. No hurry, I still need to make some preparations. If Boss is still interested, why don't you walk around in the world of Yanwue? The flow of time here is different from the main world, so it won't take long. Once I'm ready, I'll naturally inform you. I see. Luochu nodded, and curiously asked, Mr. Eric's, do you have any place to introduce? Eric's turned his eyes. How about the vicinity of Feynman Mountain? It's also the gateway of this world. Then, Luochu stood up. Dear guest, we'll wait for your notice. The boss led Miss Maid and Taisetsu away quietly. The breeze blew the grass on the hillside, and a wave of grass came from afar. Under the cherry tree, the tables and chairs for reception had disappeared. Eric sat alone under the tree, and was carefully wiping a small marionette. The limbs and other parts of the marionette were connected to the crossplate by silk threads. With the shaking of Eric's fingers, the small marionette shook flexibly like a real person and started to talk. With a childlike voice, the small marionette laughed strangely. Eric's. It kept calling Eric's name. However, it had no life, and it was just a voice made by Eric's using ventriloquism. Mr. Eric's, is that the person who can fulfill any wish you said? A girl in kimono appeared behind Eric's at the moment when the cherry blossoms fell. She looked like a porcelain doll. The girl disdainfully said, It seems that you don't have much ability. Even though I've been hiding in the tree, you still haven't found me. Eric's didn't turn his head and said indifferently, That's because you didn't show any malice. Malice? Mr. Eric's is here. How dare you be so rude? The girl's tone seemed to be disdainful, and she shook her head. It doesn't matter even if you do. I'm created by Mr. Erex himself, born from a dream. I'm immortal. That's right. Erex smiled. Are you full today? The girl touched her belly, and looked at Erex with a shy face. She said softly, too much. Then go and have a good rest. Erex waved his hand. Only then did the young girl bow. When the cherry blossoms rolled up again, she disappeared again. Erex glanced at that position and suddenly sighed. She's fictitious after all. She's not my companion. Even if she can create things, she can't create a true soul? Immortal? Even I can't say that I'm immortal in the face of such a great power. He lowered his head, and continued to fiddle with the marionette under the cross plate. It also called his name as usual. Erex, 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 Princess Ug, the foot of Method Mountain is in front. Chapter 687. They were called the Father God and Mother God of the Yenwiwa world, and they were also named after their names, Izanagi and Izanami. The two gods were born at the beginning of chaos, and they coexisted with 14 islands and 33 ancient gods' children. The last three were Amaterasu Amikami, Tsukuyomi, and Susanoo. The three were in charge of this world. The 33 gods suppressed the 14 islands. The Father God and Mother God lived in the Yahadu on the first island, Wanenjiri. In Yahadu, Izanagi and Izanami sat side by side, looking at Amaterasu Amikami, who was kneeling below, through the curtain. Amaterasu, also known as the Sun Goddess, ruled Takamagara and wielded the artifact Yasakani no Magatama. At this moment she frowned deeply. Father God, Amaterasu has been restless recently. She seems to feel a trace of misfortune. It is born somewhere in the Izumo nation. Izanagi spoke at this time, and his voice was emotionless. A disaster is about to happen. Amaterasu Amikami's face changed slightly, and she asked directly, "What is the reason?" Izanagi said indifferently, "The evil spirit is invading and wants to steal the Yenwiwa world. Now this evil spirit has successfully stolen nearly 1/3 of this world." Amaterasu Amikami's face changed again when she heard it. The three were in charge of this world. She ruled Takamagara, Tsukuyomi governed the country of darkness, and Susanoo was the master of the ocean. However, they were all appointed by the Father God and Mother God. Although they were born as the three had unparalleled power in the sky, the inheritance of the world's rules came from the Father God and Mother God. If they lost the power of the world's rules, they were not far from the 33 ancient gods' children. Naturally, they could no longer sit in the position of the three. As for the human world, there were talented people with strong physiques and natural bravery. They could even beg 8 million gods, thinking of the consequences after the world's rules were stolen. Amaterasu Amikami couldn't help but raise her head in shock and anger. There is such a thing. I don't know who this evil spirit is. Amaterasu will lead the gods of Takamagara to crusade against this disaster. Izanagi said indifferently, "Don't panic. The rules stolen by the evil spirit have reached the limit, and he is no match for me and Izanami. As long as Izanami and I stay in Yasun Hall, there is no possibility for the evil demon to go any further. But even so, how can Yenwiyue's world allow this evil demon to wreak havoc? As the saying goes, how can one allow others to snore beside one's bed? Of course, it couldn't be him." Finally, Izanami slowly opened her mouth and said, "Indeed, the Yenwiwa world is about to face a calamity. All of us should work together to get through this calamity. Therefore, the dispute between the three noble sons can be set aside." "Tensho, do you understand?" "Understood." Amaterasu Amikami hurriedly lowered his head. He knew that the father and mother were well aware of his battle with the other two, but they had been letting it go. Now that the world's calamity was right in front of them, they could no longer ignore it. Didn't that mean that the calamity this time had indeed reached a certain level of severity? "Tensho, you may leave," Izanagi said slowly at this time, Explain the seriousness of this matter to Tsukuyumi and Susanoo as soon as possible and reach a settlement. In addition, I have sensed the source of the evil spirit's theft of Yen Wuyue's world. It is in the unripe rice village under the Mount Feimin in the Izumo nation. Send a god to inquire about it. Izanagi carefully instructed some things to pay attention to before letting Amaterasu Amikami leave Yasun Hall. After a moment of silence in Yasun Hall, Izanagi's voice sounded again. I can't predict the calamity of the world. In addition to the evil spirit, there is also an unusual strange breath. Unfortunately, it disappeared in an instant. Under the world's rules, it can't be detected again. I don't know who it is. Yen Wuyue is already at the end of the storm, but it is so sudden. Sigh. Izanagi's deep sigh sounded in the hall. Soon after, Izanami whispered softly, I will accompany you and never leave you. This is the unripe rice village? Emo Xiaofei rubbed his chin and looked at the words engraved on a stone tablet on this path. Since entering the world of the movie, not only was there no barrier to communication, but he could even understand the words. This reminded Emo Xiaofei of a joking internet phrase. It is indeed a universal language in the universe. Of course, complaining was just complaining. Emo Xiaofei still sorted out his mood, crossed the boundary represented by the stone tablet, and entered the unripe rice village. He broke a piece of foxtail grass from somewhere, put it in his mouth, put one hand on the katana at his waist, and strode forward. He looked like a wandering samurai popular in this world. I'm a man who has watched Infinite Residence. While walking toward the faint smoke ahead, Emo Xiaofei began to recall the spoilers he had seen before watching the movie. The beginning of the movie was not in ancient times but in modern times. The heroine in the story went crazy during the summer vacation. She came to a remote mountain village for a vacation and inadvertently picked up an ancient writing brush. After that, the heroine fell into a coma. When she woke up, she found that she had come to the unripe rice village and became another person. It seemed to be a very common movie with the theme of soul transmigration, but with the skin of a thriller. I don't know if the heroine has transmigrated or not. Emo Xiaofei muttered to himself. He naturally had no clue how to find the class monitor, Zhuifeng, and others, let alone how to leave this world. He was even more unsure whether the class monitor and others were also involved except for himself and whether they had changed into other people's appearances. I can't just ask everyone, are you the class monitor? Emo Xiaofei couldn't help but have some lingering thoughts. Then, he finally saw a girl in coarse linen clothes carrying a basket in front. Emo Xiaofei walked forward without saying a word. Class monitor? Are you the class monitor? I'm Emo Xiaofei. Sir Warrior, what did you say? The girl's face was slightly red. Seeing the man dressed as a wandering warrior striding toward her, she was shocked and frightened. She was also a little restless. Well, I'm a little hungry. Is there any place to eat nearby? Why don't we go to your house? Don't worry. I won't eat for free. By the way, I want to ask you something. Emo Xiaofei smiled embarrassedly, then took out a gold coin from his clothes. My house is over there. This was an era where warriors were very noble. Although he was only a wandering warrior, he was extremely powerful. Ordinary people dared not to resist when they called him sir. Even if the wandering warrior didn't take the gold coin, the girl naturally didn't dare to disobey. So, at least it's quite convenient to use this account? Emo Xiaofei thought secretly, then followed the girl named Bamboo all the way into the unripe rice village. Customers, your dumplings. In front of a tea house on the pipeline, Boss Luo looked at the simple and slightly plump lady boss who brought out the food and took it with a smile. The lady boss and the people around the tea house seemed to turn a blind eye to the strange costumes of the three. Sakura dumplings. The servant girl first observed Boss Luo up and down before he ate. Then, she nodded, I roughly know the recipe. You still have the mood to see how other people make their food? Taisetsu looked at the servant girl with disdain. Since coming to this Yenwua world, although he knew it was safe to follow the boss, he always felt as if something was pressuring him. It was a feeling of extreme unwelcome. This feeling reminded Taisetsu of the feeling of coming to someone else's territory when he was in the underworld. Taisetsu, you should eat some too. Boss Luo gave a skewer to Taisetsu at this time. I'm not hungry. Taisetsu shook his head. He actually had no appetite at this moment. That won't do. Yu said softly, if you don't eat more, you won't have the strength. It won't be good if you can't exert your strength when you have to suppress one of the two sky god. Oh, you're right. Eat more. Taisetsu nodded. Then, he felt that something was wrong. The dumplings that he swallowed suddenly got stuck in his throat. Wait a minute. Can't exert my strength? Suppress. Am I supposed to suppress it? The servant girl nodded gently. Yes, it's just a weak divine power that escaped. Do you need the master to do it personally? Of course you, who have mastered Zhan Lu, will do it. Although after talking to number 18, he knew that after he picked up Zhan Lu and became the Black Soul Envoy, it would not be as simple as seducing the boss. He would have to fight and so on. But to confront a god right away? Isn't this cheating, cheating my ex-cousin-in-law? Yin. Chapter 688. From the mouths of the samurai and monks who chased after him, Zhuefeng had some knowledge of this weird place. What made him curious was that some memories of the original owner of the dog demon's body would occasionally emerge. As a half-demon beast, not only was he ostracized by his own kind, but he was also hostile to humans. He had been wandering in the outside world without any friends. Gradually, he developed an eccentric character. This Inuyasha. Zhuefeng looked at the snow-white hair that he did not have and muttered to himself. He is so similar to me. Zhuefeng had a feeling that the reason why he became what he was now might be because of such a similar experience. After learning from these samurai that this place was near Feynman Mountain, some of the information received while watching the movie became clear at the same time. It was just that when Zhuefeng was watching the movie, he had been paying attention to Zixing. He didn't pay much attention to what the movie said. Only at the beginning, he vaguely remembered that the names of places such as Unripe Rice Village were mentioned. He was not like Mo Xiaofei, who saw the follow-up plot on the internet. Naturally, he knew nothing about the content of the movie. Inuyasha seems to be planning to go to Unripe Rice Village too? Wind-chasing wolf lay on the branch of an ancient tree, crossing his legs and putting his hands behind his head. He looked at the blue sky and white clouds, slowly emptying his mind in a daze. He found that in this way, some memories of Inuyasha would emerge more. Thinking about it, Zhuefeng took out a book from his arms and opened it. There were a bunch of words on it that he couldn't understand, so later, he directly covered his face with the book and fell asleep. No. I'm going to find Zixing. Zhuefeng jumped off the ancient tree at once, and then stuffed the book into his clothes. He didn't know the origin of this book, but when he took over Inuyasha's body, he had been carrying it with him. Maybe it was something important. Anyway, it was not a burden to carry it. Since the Unripe Rice Village that I didn't pay much attention to, maybe the Purple Star Village should be remembered as well. Anyway, it's nearby. I might as well go and take a look. He was completely oblivious to his current appearance as a half-demon. In the cities of his original world, demons were already used to walking freely on the streets in their human forms. In front of a tea-house on the pipeline, Zhuefeng smelled the aroma of food and remembered that he hadn't eaten for a long time. He immediately felt hungry. He hurried forward and looked at the slightly plump lady boss. Is there anything to eat here? While teaching those warriors and monks who were chasing after him a lesson, he also obtained some money from them. Yang Kai then remembered that Purple Star didn't seem to like him taking advantage of the situation, so he simply generously handed over the money. Unexpectedly, when the slightly plump lady boss saw a barefoot, white-haired man in a crimson robe suddenly appear in front of her, her body stiffened. She shivered and cried out in horror, "Monster! Wait, wait! Don't eat me, don't eat me!" Not only the lady boss, but even the many food boxes in the tea house were hiding in horror at this time. They hugged their heads and crouched in the corner. Juefeng stretched out his hand and wanted to say something. In the end, he sighed. He shook his head and simply pretended not to see the fear of these humans. Instead, he casually sat on the bench in front of the tea house and reached out his hand to pick up a stack of different-colored dumplings on the cabinet and began to eat. As he ate, Juefeng couldn't help but think with interest. But he was still young. When he was wandering in other cities, he had more than one prank of showing his monster characteristics in front of humans. At that time, many humans were so scared that they screamed. At that time, he just felt interesting and had the pleasure of revenge. Later, when he came to Kelowna and settled down in the city where Shinryu was squatting, he didn't do this kind of thing anymore because it was forbidden by the Lord Long. The people seemed to not know about the existence of monsters. Unlike this world, there were legends of monsters and even stories of gods. It was said that there would be gods coming from time to time. Demons were even able to wander around openly. If one day, Juefeng said to himself, we can also walk openly on the street without disguising ourselves. We can do the same things as humans, go to the amusement park together, watch movies together, eat together, and don't even have to disguise ourselves. We can go to school directly and finally go to work together. What would it be like? After finishing a plate of dumplings, Juefeng was unexpectedly full. He shook his head in self-mockery. What he was thinking of, perhaps even Shinryu in Kelowna couldn't do it, let alone a little monster like him. He simply stood up and put some money on the bench. Looking at the humans who were still curled up in fear, he felt that his idea was unrealistic. After all, not everyone was like Brother Fei, who tried his best to save him even if he knew that he was a monster. Here's the money. I promised others that I won't eat and dash. Besides, I don't eat humans. Lady Boss, your food tastes good. After a long time, the people in the tea house came out nervously, but the white-haired monster in the red robe had already disappeared. Looking at the bag of money on the bench, the lady boss picked it up inconceivably. A monster that doesn't eat humans. He pays for his meal. Is there really such a monster? But thinking of the legends of monsters and the stories of monsters eating humans everywhere, the lady boss shuddered. How could there be such a monster? If so, was he still a monster? The lady boss suddenly broke out in a cold sweat, thinking that the money in the bag was an ominous thing. Afraid of being cursed by evil, she threw the bag into the stove at once. She didn't feel relieved until the bag was completely burned. She even felt that it was not safe enough. How about going to the nearby temple tomorrow to find an eminent monk to exorcise the evil? Bamboo's family was the most common small village family. In the house built with wooden planks, Mo Xiaofei, who was not used to kneeling, directly sat on the floor and ate the food prepared by this family. Sir Samurai, you gave us gold coins. We should at least prepare white rice for you. Unfortunately, our village didn't have a good harvest this year. The person who said this was Bamboo's father, Shizuro, with a look of fear and trepidation. These people were really in awe of the samurai. This was probably a kind of culture, right? Mo Xiaofei didn't mind. While eating the crude food, he muttered, "Where is the shrine where the witch lives? It's on that mountain, halfway up the mountain." Shizuro quickly opened the window, propped it up with a wooden stick, and then pointed to a mountain in front of him. "Well, Mr. Shizuro, can I stay here tonight?" Mo Xiaofei thought for a while and asked directly. Shizuro looked at his wife and daughter with a difficult expression. Finally, he gritted his teeth and nodded, saying in a trembling voice, "Okay, Sir Samurai. I'll let Bamboo prepare it for you." Chapter 689. Being in this movie world, Mo Xiaofei was the kind of person who had the script in his hand. It was a pity that his script was only half finished. The Christmas Eve outing was supposed to be sweet, but Emo Xiaofei didn't expect that the class monitor, who looked gentle and quiet, would suggest to watch the movie Spirit of the Pen. She said that she had been looking forward to it for a long time, but none of the girls in the class were willing to accompany her to watch it. This didn't fit the style at all. But Emo Xiaofei agreed in the end. Then, he roughly read the synopsis when he bought the tickets, and at the same time played the movie review. This was something that almost all movie watchers would do. The synopsis only briefly talked about the plot, but didn't mention the final ending. As for the movie review, Emo Xiaofei didn't have time to read the ending of the story. After all, it was just a preview. If he knew the ending in advance, it would be meaningless to watch the movie. Thinking of this, after a simple shower, Emo Xiaofei lay down in the room arranged by Kiziru's family. Of course, this kind of simple and crude house was not very comfortable. The class monitor should know more. After all, she said that she had been looking forward to it for a long time. At this time, there was a soft knock on the door. Emo Xiaofei curiously asked, "Who is it?" "Master Kojiro, it's me. Bamboo." Bamboo's voice came. As for the so-called Kojiro, it was the name of the original owner of this body that Emo Xiaofei was using at this time. He saw it from the household registration certificate in this body's belongings. The full name was Sasaki Kojiro, which Emo Xiaofei couldn't help but ridicule. Was there also Miyamoto Musashi? But he didn't know anything about this Sasaki Kojiro. As for the katana he carried with him, it was not the sharp sword that was taller than a person in his impression. Therefore, Emo Xiaofei was not sure if this Kojiro was the powerful swordsman he knew. "Come in. What's the matter?" Emo Xiaofei tidied up his clothes and sat up from the quilt. He saw Bamboo slowly push open the wooden door of the room. She was still kneeling in the corridor outside, and there was a tray with teacups next to her. "Tea delivery?" Emo Xiaofei was stunned and then shook his head secretly. It seemed that the warriors in this era were indeed a privileged class. Even as a wandering warrior, these civilians respected and feared him. Through the original plot introduction, Emo Xiaofei knew that there was also a warrior in Unripe Rice Village. He was a warrior who owned his own fief. The entire Unripe Rice Village, and even the nearby fields belonged to this warrior. In short, he was the landlord. Emo Xiaofei pondered for a while before looking at Bamboo. "Come in. I have something to ask you." If he remembered correctly, this Bamboo seemed to have appeared in a movie review. Emo Xiaofei did not pay attention to whether there was Bamboo on the poster or not. But since it was mentioned in the movie review, it was at least a character in the plot. Emo Xiaofei had just entered the Unripe Rice Village and had already encountered the characters related to the plot. He felt that his start seemed to be good. "My apologies." Bamboo still had a reserved look. She carried the plate and came in on her knees. Finally, she put the teacup in front of Emo Xiaofei and lowered her head. "Relax." Emo Xiaofei tried to be polite. He was just a student. He really couldn't adapt to the feeling brought by this so-called privilege. "Bamboo doesn't dare to be rude." "Forget it." Emo Xiaofei shook his head. "Let me ask you. Is the samurai family in Unripe Rice Village called Nagato?" Bamboo was slightly surprised. "Sir Kojiro, is he a friend of Master Nagato?" Emo Xiaofei did not answer but asked instead, "Let me ask you again. Has Master Nagato's younger brother come back?" It turns out that Sir Kojiro also knows Sir Saburo. Bamboo seemed to be more curious about the origin of this Kojiro. "Sir Saburo Nagato has returned a month ago. I heard that he was injured in the frontline battle and temporarily went home to recuperate. It is an honor to be able to contribute to the country, even if he is injured." Emo Xiaofei was amused. How is this Saburo Nagato injured in the front line? In fact, he seemed to be a deserter before the war and sneaked back. However, he encountered bandits on the way. After losing the battle, he was injured and fled again. He came back here in dire straits, but he claimed that he had gained merits in the front line. Now he was injured, so he went home to recuperate. As for the reward, he should be able to receive it after the war was over. Such rhetoric spread in unripe rice village, and the people who didn't know the truth believed it. They praised it every day. It was unknown if Saburo Nagato would be shy or not. But if Saburo Nagato came back, that is to say, the storyline officially began? After Emo Xiaofei inquired about the location of Nagato's house from Bamboo, he said, "I'm tired today. Let's call it a day." His original intention was to let Bamboo take off by herself, and then leave quietly at night. Then, he would first go to Nagato's house to see the situation. He would go up the mountain tomorrow morning to meet the Miko of the shrine. Unexpectedly, Bamboo's shoulders trembled slightly at this moment. She gritted her teeth as if she had made up her mind. She slowly turned around and got up, but she did not leave. The girl suddenly untied her belt, and her clothes slipped off her shoulders at once. Although this girl's clothes were coarse linen, and her face skin could only be regarded as ordinary, the skin under the clothes was whiter than snow. She was also 14 or 15 years old. For a young and vigorous man, Emo Xiaofei felt that his physiology was very normal. When he suddenly saw such a scene, his breathing became heavier subconsciously. However, his spirit was far beyond ordinary people after all. He had a sincere heart that even the boss and Kelowna Shinryu praised. He quickly recovered his calmness. Emo Xiaofei tilted his head. He had some guesses about Bamboo's behavior. Recalling Zizura's weird expression during the meal, he guessed that this honest guy must have taken his request to stay here for the night as this was what he meant. "Go out. I don't need these." Emo Xiaofei shook his head. "If a girl doesn't cherish herself, no one will cherish you. Tell your father that I don't mean that. I just want to rest for a night. Tell him not to do unnecessary things." Emo Xiaofei's knowledge gradually became richer. He was no longer as extreme as before, setting up a private prison to punish those who did evil. But he would also quietly take action and do a lot of good deeds that suited heroes. If it weren't for a nameless firefighter wandering in the darkness of the city and stopping a lot of crimes, Police Officer Ma, who was known as a sharpshooter, wouldn't be so idle to shout about the world being peaceful and play minesweeper in the office all day long. It seemed that Kishiro didn't simply misunderstand. He probably really regarded himself as a wandering samurai and had a little intention. If he took a fancy to Bamboo and settled down, with the ability of a wandering samurai, he might be able to get a reward and own a fief. At the very least, he could become a diner of a noble family that was nobler than the Nagato family. It was much better than those hot-headed young men in the village. From then on, his family could live a happy life. Hearing this, Bamboo suddenly turned her head. The girl's face had already turned red because of this action, but now she became frightened because of Emo Xiaofei's decisiveness. She quickly panicked. "Master Kojiro, do you think Bamboo is not qualified to serve you?" "No, I have someone I like." Emo Xiaofei shook his head and his stance was very firm. "Let's treat tonight's incident as if it didn't happen." Unexpectedly, Bamboo seemed to be unable to listen to such rejection. Her face turned pale, and she suddenly did something that Emo Xiaofei couldn't react to. Regardless of how messy her unbuttoned clothes were, Bamboo directly rushed into Emo Xiaofei's arms. Hey! Emo Xiaofei was suddenly shocked. He wanted to use his telekinesis to reject her, but he promptly thought that Bamboo's weak body couldn't withstand this kind of impact. He could only stand up quickly, breaking away from Bamboo's hands, turned around and said in a deep voice, "If you don't go out, I will leave tonight." "Sir Little Jiro." Bamboo was sobbing. She stuck her body to Emo Xiaofei's back and hugged him, saying sadly, "Can you please pamper Bamboo for one night? Bamboo don't want to die." Emo Xiaofei gave a start. What was this situation? But at this time, Emo Xiaofei frowned. He didn't have time to ask about Bamboo, but just whispered, Sorry, you can sleep for a while. Spirit collision. With a thought, Bamboo's entire body suddenly became soft. This kind of spirit collision was one of the abilities that he had developed through the long Shirua's training. He picked up the cup, closed his eyes, and hurriedly covered the bamboo with it. He didn't care about this place anymore, picked up the katana, and quickly left here. In ancient times, this kind of village, other than the stars and the moon, there was no public lighting at all. But even without a lantern, Mo Xiaofei could still see very clearly with his telekinesis entwined in his eyes. In the vast night, there were two figures floating on the hillside. Both of them were young and beautiful women in crimson clothes. This place is very strange, even vaguely ominous. I'm afraid it's the place mentioned by the God Master, Amaterasu Amakami. One of the women frowned at this time, seeming to be observing the surrounding environment. What do you think? The other one, who was called Amaterasu Amakami, nodded with a dignified look. Amaterasu Amakami, I have the same opinion as you. These two, together with the other one, Amaterasu Amakami, were called the three goddesses of Zhongzhou. They were born from the mist that Amaterasu Amakami blew out when she broke Su Susanu's sword of Tatsuka and put it into her mouth. In theory, they were the children of Amaterasu Amakami. At this time, Amaterasu Amakami said with a worried face, "The God Master has come to the country of darkness to look for Madame Tsukuyami and ordered us to temporarily stop our actions in the country of darkness. Now, he asked you and me to come to this remote place to investigate, but I don't know the reason." Amaterasu Amakami said, "I'm afraid that the God Master has reached some kind of agreement with Madame Tsukuyami. When the three noble sons compete, there has never been a party with complete superiority. If Lord Tsukuyami and Madame Tsukuyami join forces this time, then Lord Susanoo will definitely be defeated." Amaterasu Amakami nodded. Apparently, she agreed with the speculation of Amaterasu Amakami, one of the three goddesses, but I don't know what secrets there are in this unripe rice village. With your and my divine power, we can't see through it. This village seems to be shrouded in a layer of fog, and there is a vague evil intention lurking. I don't know who dares to peep. Jiu Ji-ming coldly snorted. Light suddenly appeared on his palm within the darkness. He waved his hand towards a certain spot below the mountain slope. Immediately, a strong wind blew. It was incomparably ferocious, causing the ground to split apart. At this moment, a figure flew out from below and landed in front of the two goddesses. Then, he looked at them with a strange expression. "Samurai." Amaterasu Amakami frowned and looked up and down. She saw a rather young and handsome man. However, this samurai could dodge Amaterasu Amakami's follow-up attack. He was quite capable. In this Yenwuyue world, a powerful samurai could deal with evil monsters and great monsters. Then, as one of the three goddesses, she would not be too surprised if he had some skills. "I don't mean any harm. I just want to ask something. May I know who you two are?" This person was Mo Xiaofei. His huge spirit power suddenly sensed two unusual breaths that suddenly appeared in this unripe rice village. He was looking for clues here, so he naturally wanted to take a look. "I'm Amaterasu Amakami." "I'm Amaterasu Amakami," the two goddesses said indifferently one after another. In their opinion, as long as they reported their god name, these samurai would naturally kneel down. They also happened to have something to ask this wild samurai who suddenly appeared in the village. "What? Say it again?" Mo Xiaofei scratched his head. He was quite good at history, but that was also the history of his country. For this Yenwuyue world similar to District 11, he really couldn't figure it out. "We're the three goddesses of Zong 2. Amaterasu Amakami snorted heavily at this time. "Goddess?" Mo Xiaofei was taken aback, then nodded. "If she is a goddess, she should know a lot of things. In that case, I don't need to find the witch in the shrine on the mountain." Mo Xiaofei was overjoyed. He came forward without thinking. "Madam Goddess, just in time. I have something to ask. I'm not here originally. But, he just took a few steps forward. Before he got close to the two goddesses, Amaterasu Amakami was furious. How dare you? How dare a mortal approach and blaspheme the god's power? Amaterasu Amakami's eyes narrowed. A god's power directly pressed down. At the same time, she stretched out her hand and pressed the void. Another invisible force pressed down on Emo Xiaofei. Unable to withstand such an attack, Emo Xiaofei instinctively raised his hand and waved, dispelling the huge force that was suppressing him. Then, he felt as if something had pierced into his head, causing him to frown and shout out loud. A huge spirit power gushed out, directly colliding with the god's power. The spirit power was like a sharp sword, shattering the god's power in an instant. Amaterasu Amakami's face changed dramatically at this time. A trace of red flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Her eyes were full of disbelief. A mortal samurai was so powerful that he could directly cut off the god's power? Who are you? Amaterasu Amakami exclaimed. Are these two really goddesses? Chapter 690. Emo Xiaofei didn't want to fight with the two goddesses. He didn't want to have any conflict with them. The reason why he resisted was because they attacked him first. It was just that the behavior of starting a fight at the slightest disagreement was not in line with his belief. Therefore, even though he had some complaints about the other party attacking him the moment he came up, he did not really take it to heart. If he was in the other party's shoes, if something of his was suddenly broken, the first thing he would think of would probably be a self-protection mechanism. Thinking in their shoes was something that Emo Xiaofei realized when he came in. This way, he wouldn't be impulsive and become more rational. There was only one step between bullying the weak and being a real expert. I didn't mean to offend you. I'm sorry. Emo Xiaofei nodded and then took a step back. It could be seen that the two goddesses were very disgusted with strangers who approached them casually. The two Zanzi goddesses quickly exchanged a look. They were born almost at the same time. They were not only born with powerful abilities, but also a strong tacit understanding. This human martial art had a special power that could ignore the power of gods. It could even injure one of them in a short period of contact. It was a very serious matter to injure a god. Although Yen Wuiyue claimed to have 8 million beings, in the eyes of the three Zanzi goddesses, the so-called 8 million was just an imaginary number. Everything in Yen Wuiyue could become a god, but most of them were just some weak individuals. It was just that mortals were ignorant and were in awe of any ability that was slightly beyond their own. Therefore, the three goddesses did not find it strange that human warriors, or powerful monks, or witches could cause trouble for the gods and monsters. However, it was impossible for human warriors to fight against the gods who truly possessed divine power. The real gods had divine power. This was the reason why mortals were in awe of them and couldn't resist. Just like their god, Amaterasu Amakami. When Amaterasu was angry, no one in Takamagara dared to offend her. That was the real earth-shattering power. But the warriors of the mortal world were able to cut off the true power of the gods. If the warriors of the mortal world were able to grasp this special power, then wouldn't it be Amaterasu Amakami asked the two of them to come to this remote mountain village to monitor? Could it be because of the emergence of this strange power that could shake the foundation of the gods' rule? Who are you? After a quick exchange, Ajensheim looked at Emo Xiaofei and asked in a low voice. Kojiro, Sasaki Kojiro. Emo Xiaofei thought for a while and felt that these two goddesses were not very reliable. He decided to be cautious and only provided the name of the original owner of this body. Oh, it turned out to be young Master Kojiro. Ajin Island's Ji Ming nodded, then said in a serious tone, "Just now I was very rude." But in his heart, he was already thinking that when he returned, he would activate his own divine subordinates and inquire about the origin of this samurai Sasaki Kojiro. A samurai who could cut off Kamui should not be a nameless person. What the hell is with the Kojiro Palace? The difference in this second made Mo Xiaofei a little stunned. However, in his impression, Yen Wuyue's world seemed to be highly compatible with District 11. Both of them probably paid attention to etiquette like this, right? No, I'm not right either. Mo Xiaofei shook his head. He didn't know how to respond. As the saying goes, don't hit a smiling person. No, we also made mistakes. The situation wasn't clear. Although it was a proper reaction, we made a move first. Now that I think about it, it's fortunate that it's young Master Kojiro. If it's just an ordinary person, I'm afraid it's already in danger. After all, we still mishandled it. In fact, it's also wrong for me to hide and eavesdrop from the beginning. The two sides didn't start a war. Instead, they kept apologizing. I don't know what's wrong with this script. Mo Xiaofei finally shook his head. He really didn't have the confidence to defeat this ingrained concept of etiquette. He simply said, Lord Goddess, I wonder why you two came to Unripe Rice Village? Ajin Island's Ji-Ming said slowly, we passed by and found that there seems to be something strange about Unripe Rice Village, so we checked it out. I don't know why young Master Kojiro. There seems to be no mention in the spoilers and comments that there will be gods in the story? Mo Xiaofei frowned. Did I really take the wrong script? I got separated from my companions. Mo Xiaofei thought and said, because I passed by Unripe Rice Village, I intend to inquire here. Because of the weather, I will temporarily stay in Unripe Rice Village tonight. I see. Ajin Island's Ji-Ming nodded. Next to him, Ji-Ming suddenly asked, Young Master Kojiro, I wonder if the companion you mentioned is as powerful as you? Mo Xiaofei rubbed his chin and said subconsciously, he should be more powerful than me, right? He had seen Zhuefeng fight with his current teacher, Kelowna Shinryu. Although Zhuefeng seemed to be unable to use that kind of power for the time being, God knew when Zhuefeng would suddenly use Seed and beat everyone. In that case, Mo Xiaofei knew that he couldn't defeat Seed, so it wasn't a mistake to use, should be more powerful than me, to describe it. The three goddesses didn't think that the samurai's companion would be a real monster with a strong background. They only thought that the companion was also a powerful samurai. More powerful than this guy who cut off Kamui? Ji-Ming couldn't help but ask cautiously, Young Master Kojiro, do you have many companions? There are quite a lot. Mo Xiaofei wasn't afraid. Anyway, it seemed that his soul had transmigrated here. His information with the original world must be cut off. If Zhuefeng used Seed, Mo Xiaofei knew that he couldn't defeat him, let alone his teacher, Long Shirua. As for the source of his ability, the boss, this was a problem that Mo Xiaofei had never thought about, and he didn't intend to think about it. Mo Xiaofei always felt that every time his teacher mentioned the boss, although she always called him a profiteer, she felt a little lacking in confidence. Sure enough, the samurai in the human world had mastered the terrifying power to shake the foundation of the god's rule. The two goddesses quickly exchanged glances again. Although they didn't know if Kojiro was telling the truth when he said that he was just passing by, if it had nothing to do with Amaterasu Amikami ordering them to monitor the secrets of Unripe Rice Village, then this discovery would be an unexpected surprise. It might even be more important than the secrets hidden in Unripe Rice Village. After all, it was related to the foundation of the gods. I have to report. I have to go back and report immediately. But at the same time, I have to hold on to this human samurai and get more information from him. With just a simple glance, Kojiro Haim and Ojinjima Haim had already decided what to do. Ojinjima Haim nodded at this moment. I still have some things to deal with. I'll leave first. Kojiro Haim nodded in agreement. I'll wait here for sister's return. Ojinjima Haim was surrounded by a faint white light and went away. Mo Xiaofei glanced at it and felt that he could achieve this speed. It was just that he didn't have such a holy light special effect. Your Highness Kojiro, I wonder if you can accompany me to explore the secrets of Unripe Rice Village? Kojiro Haim suddenly issued an invitation at this time. Emo Xiaofei thought for a while and agreed directly. But, can you wait? Emo Xiaofei said seriously at this time, I still have some things to deal with, but I will be back here soon. It's okay. I'll wait here for your Highness Kojiro to return. Kojiro Haim bowed slowly. Apart from her identity as a goddess, she looked like a delicate woman. After all, a goddess was the embodiment of beauty. This kind of beauty was mostly rooted in human imagination. Taisetsu tried to deepen the communication between himself and Jean Lu. God knows when Erex is going to make a move. Going against the god of a world, this kind of thing sounded ridiculous. Taisetsu naturally felt a little guilty. But he wasn't the kind of person who would back down. Then, he had to be more prepared. Unripe rice village. Such words were probably written on the stone tablet in front. Taisetsu didn't know this language, but the boss and the servant girl stopped here. The name of the village was mentioned before, so it should be correct. On another hillside, Yuyi looked at the village surrounded by crisscrossed fields below. It was summer in the Yenwua world at this time. It was still sultry in the middle of the night. At this time, from a stream below, fireflies flew out like glowing dandelions, dotting the hillside. The paddy field was as calm as a mirror. Because there was no wind, it was even calmer. They reflected the stars and the moonlight, and they were also filled with fluorescence like the galaxy. At this time, a streamer cut through the night sky and went away. Boss Luo withdrew his gaze with a faint smile on his face. You have matured a lot. Yes. Yuyi smiled. Taisetsu looked at the streamer in the distance and said thoughtfully, Boss, is that a god? He felt that he could deal with it. Jean Lu also sent a disdainful thought at the same time. The god here. Boss Luo replied more accurately. Taisetsu frowned and said subconsciously, What if it's not here? It can't leave here. Luochu shook his head. The outside will not accept them. Taisetsu said blankly, Why? Luochu looked at Taisetsu and said coldly, Will you accept another self that appears in front of you? No matter if it's memory, ability, or even feelings, everything can be another self that is like you. This. Taisetsu pondered for a while and finally shook his head. I don't know, but is it possible? Yuyi said, We are the only ones, so it's impossible. Taisetsu seemed to think of something, but he could not grasp it. Luochu suddenly waved his hand. Taisetsu seemed to be pulled by something. He looked back and felt that the space behind him suddenly collapsed. If the guest is not so fast, you should go and warm up first. Luochu said abruptly, You only used Jean Lu to kill the resentful spirit in the reservoir once. You still need to practice more. Taisetsu nodded. He would do whatever the boss asked him to do. Because the kindness was too great, he had long made up his mind to be the boss's sharpest sword. Where are we going? Luochu said. It should be a place called Evil Ghost Island. It's overseas, so it's okay to do as much as you want. Taisetsu nodded, turned around, and stepped directly into the collapsed space. Jean Lu, who was on him, sent out a spirited thought at this time. It seemed to have become excited. It must be because it had been silent for too long. The place where the space collapsed gradually calmed down. Luochu looked down at this time, but he was looking at a magnificent mansion in the unripe rice village below. It was a place that was still lit in the dark night. Luochu said softly, Mr. Erex, you still like nightmares more, Yuyi said, because dreams are difficult to come true, nightmares are more realistic. Boss Luo suddenly said, Have you ever had a dream? Yuyi shook her head. She wouldn't dream and couldn't dream. Boss Luo turned his palm. This is for you. It was a beautiful gift box. The servant girl was taken aback. She raised her cute face and looked at her master. Luochu chuckled softly. I will give a gift to all the guests, let alone you. Yuyi blinked her beautiful eyes and took it from Luochu's hands. Master, can I choose when I want to open it? Then keep it first. Luochu nodded. He pointed to a place in front and smiled. accompany me for a walk over there." The servant girl naturally nodded obediently. Mo Xiao returned directly to Zizura's home. He didn't want to use his superpower to hurt ordinary people. At that time, he was just anxious, so he used the mental impact on bamboo. At this moment, he was still a little worried about whether it would cause more undesirable consequences, so he needed to come back and take a look before he could rest assured. In addition, he was also very curious about Bamboo's request. It seemed that there were many discrepancies with the script he had. Even the gods appeared in this small, unripe rice village. Could it be the boss's masterpiece? To be able to pull people into such a magical world, in Mo Xiaofei's opinion, no one except the boss could do this. While thinking about it, Mo Xiaofei also used mental stimulation to wake Bamboo up. At this time, Bamboo slowly woke up. When she opened her eyes, she found that she was lying in the quilt, and Sir Kojiro was sitting cross-legged next to her. The first thing she thought about was whether she had already been pampered, so she blushed and lifted the blanket to look at her body. Her clothes were intact. Mo Xiaofei saw Bamboo's action and knew what she was thinking. At this time, he coughed twice awkwardly, then looked at Bamboo and said seriously, "Bamboo, why did you do such a thing? Is there anything you can't tell me? Why don't you tell me, cough, that you will die? I need a man's essence otherwise." Bamboo lowered her head and said sadly, I can't live." Chapter 691. Izanagi washed his right eye and gave birth to Tsukuyomi. He was the god in charge of the night. In Tsukuyomi's shrine, even if the three noble sons were fighting, he was still very polite to Amaterasu Amikami. This was not a matter of strength, but a matter of who was born first. Father God and Mother God, is that true? After a secret conversation, Tsukuyomi's expression changed again and again. He was the god in charge of the night, Tsukuyomi. The moon was bright and flawless, but there was also a side of the moon that couldn't see the sun. Tsukuyomi, who was as handsome as a young girl, had a gloomy face at this time. The three noble sons were fighting for Yen Wuye's world authority. But if the omnipotence was stolen by the evil demon, this situation of the three noble sons fighting would become meaningless. Did sister inform Susanoo? Tsukuyomi thought for a moment before asking with a solemn expression. At this moment, heavy footsteps came from the shrine. A huge samurai wearing a crimson samurai armor broke in directly. None of the servants and shamans outside the shrine dared to step forward to stop him. "Amaterasu, why did you ask me to come here?" The visitor was the last of the three noble sons, the ruler of the ocean, Susanoo, who was born when Izanagi tested his nose. There was another secret conversation. When Susanoo heard this, his reaction was not much better than Tsukuyomi. Although Susanoo was puzzled about this matter, he was only puzzled about the sudden appearance of this evil demon. As for the seriousness of the evil demon stealing the world, Amaterasu naturally could not lie about this. This was something that could be asked about Father God and Mother God, as long as they went to Yahiro Nodon. In addition, Amaterasu also brought Izanagi's token. Even if Tsukuyomi and Susanoo had more doubts in their hearts, they had to obey at this time. Father God means to let us three noble sons take action and defeat this evil demon who stole the world together? Tsukuyomi pondered for a moment. Amaterasu said, "Father God and Mother God need to guard Yahiro Nodon. Once you leave, I am afraid that the evil demon will take advantage of the situation." The origin was Yahiro Nodon on the heavenly jade pillar, which was the center of Yen Wuye's world. It was because of the guarding of these two gods that Yen Wuye's world was stable. "I will summon the troops immediately. But Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, both of you need to hold nothing back." Susanoo was very straightforward. "We know each other very well. If there is anything to hide, we will know at a glance." Tsukuyomi said indifferently, "Okay." Amaterasu nodded slowly. "Before I came, Takamaji Ehara had already begun to gather. I have also instructed the 2 Zanzu goddesses to head to Unripe Rice Village to investigate. Calculating the time, there should be news. Susanoo directly knelt down and said solemnly, "No matter what kind of evil demon it is, I will slay it with my sword." This was the peerless demon who had killed the Hakata serpent. The murderous aura surrounding his body was much denser than that of the other 3 noble sons. A stream of light came to Tsukuyami's shrine at this time, but it stopped outside the shrine. It was one of the 3 goddesses, Ojinjima Haim. However, she was not a big shot like Susan Meizuan. Naturally, she did not dare to barge in casually. "Ajin Island's Ji Ming, come in." Amaterasu Amakami raised his hand. As soon as Ajin Island's Ji Ming entered, she knelt in front of the 3 noble sons. Tsukuyami sat in the middle of the 3 noble sons, while the other 2 sat on the left and right. After all, this was the country of darkness, the territory of the moon god. The 3 noble sons' gazes fell on Ajin Island's Ji Ming, making her very nervous. She began to figure out the seriousness of the situation again. "Ajin Island's Ji Ming, why are you the only one here?" Amaterasu frowned. Ajin Island's Ji Ming hurriedly said, "Lord God, I was ordered to go to the back of Mount Famen with Tokudu Amakami." She explained everything in detail. In the end, Tokudu Amakami stayed temporarily to observe the human samurai. "I came back to report. Can that human samurai really cut off the divine might?" As soon as Susanoo spoke at this time, the sound of wind and thunder echoed in the shrine hall. "I saw it with my own eyes." "Sasaki Kojiro?" Tsukuyami frowned. "I have some impression of this human samurai. He once asked for several demons in the country of darkness. He is a swordsman who wants to pursue the pinnacle of swordsmanship. In the mortal world, his swordsmanship is unparalleled. But it is only mortal swordsmanship. Even if he goes further, he can't cut off the divine might. But he strangely appeared in Unripe Rice Village. Could it be? Tsukuyami looked around and saw a trace of solemnity from Amaterasu Amakami and Susanoo at the same time. Ajin Island's Ji Ming was alarmed that a mortal had mastered the ability to shake the foundation of the god's rule. However, the 3 noble sons were alarmed that this was the work of the evil demon who intended to steal the world. "I will go back to the sea and gather the evil spirits first." Susanoo stood up without saying a word. "Gather at Mount Famen in 3 days. Then, I will return to Takamagara first." Amaterasu Amakami also stood up. "Ajin Island's Ji Ming, come back with me first." "Farewell, sister." Tsukuyami stood up to welcome her. Although it was called Devil's Island, in Taisetsu's view, it was more like a place piled up by countless reef. The entire island wasn't big, but it was barren and desolate. In addition, the sky was covered with dark clouds, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. He didn't know if this place was like this every day or if he just happened to encounter such terrible weather. "Stop! Who are you?" On the cliff in front, a 3-meter-tall huge figure suddenly appeared. He held a huge club full of sharp thorns in his hand. He had a single horn on his head, and his entire body was crimson. It was a one-eyed humanoid monster. "Is this the evil spirit?" Taisetsu looked at it and then grabbed the key. With a wave of his hand, Azure appeared. There was a faint sound of a sword. "How long has it been since you fought?" Seeing Jean Lu's excited look, Taisetsu couldn't help but shake his head. The crimson evil spirit jumped down at this time and said angrily, "Human, how dare you ignore me? I want you dead." Taisetsu frowned and said, "Are you the only one here? I alone am enough to kill and eat you." The evil spirit grinned. Taisetsu's lips moved, but he didn't say anything in the end. Seeing this, the evil spirit was instantly enraged. "Human, how dare you look down on me? Roar! First of all, I don't think I taste good." Taisetsu shook his head. "Also, I didn't say it because I didn't want to hurt you, because my partner just said something to me." "What did he say?" Taisetsu said indifferently, If I use this sword, you will die. Jean Lu swung out and the sword energy was everywhere. The crimson evil spirit that was still roaring was instantly smashed into pieces. Even the huge club in his hand was cut into dozens of pieces. Did I go overboard? Taisetsu walked closer and looked at the evil spirit's corpse. There was nothing scary about it. Blood. Taisetsu had seen a lot of it before. He just waved Jean Lu in his hand and whispered, "So, how long has it been since you last fought?" Jean Lu buzzed and rushed out directly. Daz was still holding Jean Lu in one hand, but his body was directly brought up by Jean Lu and rushed directly into the depths of the evil ghost island. Bang! With a loud sound, the entire evil spirit island seemed to be shaken. A ray of light crashed into one of the mountain peaks on Malevolent Demon Island and sank into it. When Taisetsu coughed and used his palm to sweep away the dust and dirt on his body, he felt as if there were countless eyes on him. He couldn't help but look up. In front of him was an incomparably huge cave, with layers upon layers. At this moment, as far as the eye could see, there were crimson, green, and leopard print shorts. There were probably hundreds of ugly evil spirits, all of whom were looking at him in astonishment. Human! Roar! Kill him! Stew him! If I use this sword you might die. Jean Lu, can you not say this every time? Sword light flashed. Why is there no male? Emo Xiaofei paused. Without that, you will die? Zhuzi lowered her head, but she didn't dare to look at Emo Xiaofei. She said sadly, "The young women in the village are cursed after reaching the age of 14. If there is no male essence to sustain them, they can't live for more than a month. Many women in the village have died unnatural death." Emo Xiaofei was taken aback. Not to mention where the curse came from, Zhuzi's statement seemed to have some logical flaws. He frowned and said, "You said that many girls have died? That's not right. If one time can last for a month, it shouldn't be reasonable, right? At the very least, if they get married, shouldn't they be able to solve this problem?" In Emo Xiaofei's view, such a curse would at most make the people in the unripe rice village marry earlier. However, early marriage was very common in ancient times. It would be great if it's just like this. Zhuzi said sadly, however, the terrible part of this curse is that the same male essence can only sustain a woman for a month. When it comes to the next month, another different male essence is needed. This. Emo Xiaofei's eyes widened suddenly. She must have sex with a different man every month to prolong her life? What kind of curse is this? The wife must go with the husband. Is it a cuckold curse? The village routinely changes and plays with each other every month? Zhuzi you. Emo Xiaofei looked at Zhuzi uneasily. How old are you this year? Just turned 14. Zhuzi looked at Emo Xiaofei pitifully. Her pale face suddenly showed some shyness. Sir Little Cairo, Zhuzi is still a virgin. Her voice was so subtle that it was almost inaudible. Emo Xiaofei swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The air suddenly became quiet. He finally took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry. Although I won't leave you in the lurch, I really can't help you with this kind of thing. Besides, why is it an outsider like me?" Zhuzi gritted her teeth and said, "Sir Little Cairo, we can't go out of the unripe rice village. Once we leave, we will die. So even if the women outside the village want to go out to find a man to copulate with, they can't do it. Therefore, the foreign men are particularly important to us. Sir Little Cairo, please save Zhuzi and the other women in the village. There are already several women who are about to reach the deadline and can't find a new male essence. So as long as Sir Little Cairo is willing, you can at least let us live for another month." Emo Xiaofei stood up and paced back and forth in the room. He shook his head and said, "This is too abnormal. Don't you have a shrine and a Miko? Why doesn't the Miko help you?" "Miko is also a victim of the curse," Bamboo said sadly. "The previous generation's Miko-sama died because she couldn't find a suitable man within the time limit. And now, the new Miko-sama still has half a year to go before she turns 14, But after all, she's still young. Probably out of respect for the Miko, even though he knew that the young witch couldn't do it, he could only say it was because of her young age. That's not right. According to the plot, shouldn't the unripe rice village's Miko be powerful and purify the pen spirit with the help of the heroine? Although Emo Xiaofei wasn't clear about the specific plot, the plot should be heading in this direction. But now wait. Emo Xiaofei suddenly remembered that there was a goddess waiting for him outside. He couldn't help but have an idea. The Miko couldn't deal with this curse, but if the goddess took action, it should be no problem. Emo Xiaofei's faith would be shattered if he didn't help. He immediately said, "Zhuzi, I know what happened to you. I will find a way to help you solve this matter. But you have to tell me the source of this curse." "Sir Little Cairo?" Zhuzi raised her head in surprise at this time. Emo Xiaofei had to say, "If it's a demon making trouble, I at least have the ability to deal with it." Zhuzi said in surprise, "Sir Little Cairo, are you a samurai?" "Sort of." Emo Xiaofei had to nod. But at this moment there were a lot of footsteps outside the house. In addition, there was a fire outside and there was a hubbub of voices. The door of the room was hurriedly opened at this time. It was Zhuzi's father, Zizuru. At this time, Zizuru looked back and forth between Zhuzi and Emo Xiaofei. Seeing that both of them were well dressed, he couldn't help but look a little disappointed. He had to say, "Sir Little Cairo, Master Nagato has been waiting outside. Please meet him." Emo Xiaofei frowned and asked abruptly, "Are you the one who tipped him off? Do you want to catch me and keep me in this place?" His voice was a bit heavy, and there was a trace of anger in it. The body he was wearing had an extraordinary bearing. He Zhilong knew that he was in the wrong, so he knelt down in fear and said, "Master Kojiro, I'm sorry. I have no other choice. If Master Nagato knows that I have a secret stash, Women would die because of the curse, but men didn't seem to have this restriction. They just couldn't go out of the village. This Zizuru was naturally afraid of offending the samurai family that controlled this place. "Excuse me, is Your Highness Little Cairo here? Can you come out to meet me?" A heavy voice came slowly at this time. Emo Xiaofei's eyes focused. Transmission. Chapter 692. It was not difficult to imagine that the entire village was shrouded in such a curse. The villagers valued this fresh blood, outsider to the point that almost all the men in the village were mobilized. Outside the crowd, there were many village women looking at the scene. There was a faint uneasiness on their faces, as well as a hint of expectation. Emo Xiaofei glanced at Kashiro and Bamboo. He didn't say anything, walked out directly, and met the samurai family's master of Unripe Rice Village. After Master Nagato looked up and down at Emo Xiaofei, he suddenly said, "Are you really a samurai? Do you have an identity certificate? Just think of me as a wandering samurai." Emo Xiaofei waved his hand and said. Emo Xiaofei didn't know what Master Nagato was thinking, but this kind of gaze was not unfamiliar to Emo Xiaofei. It was like a drug addict seeing hallucinogenic white powder. Master Nagato nodded. "Then, please come with me." The men in slightly better clothes around him should be from the samurai family, but most of them were carrying a bamboo sword. Including Master Nagato, there were only 3 people who actually wore a samurai sword. One of them was somewhat similar to Master Nagato. He looked like he was in his 30s. He must be Saburo Nagato, who escaped from the battle. The other one was very young. He was probably not much older than the real Emo Xiaofei. He was only 17 or 18 years old. He should be Master Nagato's son. "Okay, but I need to pack up." Emo Xiaofei nodded, then turned and walked into the house. Master Nagato waved his hand at this time. The servants behind him, and many men in the village, immediately surrounded this place inside and out. These naturally couldn't be hidden from Emo Xiaofei's perception. He shook his head. He had an indescribable feeling about this village in his heart. "Your Highness Kojiro, the people outside can't stop you at all. Suddenly, there was the voice of Doji Haiming. Emo Xiaofei frowned, slowly turned around in the room, shook his head, and said, "They also have their difficulties. If there is a conflict, it will only hurt the innocent." Doji Haiming also frowned slightly, but she didn't continue on this issue. She just said indifferently, "I saw that Your Highness Kojiro hasn't returned for a long time, so I came to check." "Goddess, what do you think of the curse of this village?" Emo Xiaofei asked abruptly. Jiu Ji Ming glanced at Emo Xiaofei. Since this human warrior asked this question, he obviously knew that she was coming and even knew that she had heard the conversation between him and Bamboo. Jiu Ji Ming didn't blush. She frowned and said, "This village is indeed filled with an ominous feeling. As for the curse that the village girl spoke of, it's hard to say." "Hard to say?" Emo Xiaofei was surprised. Jiu Ji Ming nodded and said, "Some curses are very strange, they won't show up immediately. Even as a god, some powerful curses need to be carefully examined before they can be discovered." This was completely different from the concept of an omniscient and omnipotent god that he knew. Emo Xiaofei nodded. However, he felt less reverence for the so-called three goddesses. Perhaps the so-called god was just a slightly more powerful creature. There was still a long way to go before they could be omniscient and omnipotent. Emo Xiaofei took a deep breath and said, "Goddess, can you do me a favor?" "Tell me first," Jiu Ji Ming said indifferently. Emo Xiaofei said, "The Nagato family may know more about this curse, so I plan to go to Master Nagato's house. As for Bamboo, Goddess, can you help me to check the origin of this curse?" Jiu Ji Ming was surprised. "Your Highness Kojiro, are you going to solve this problem for the villagers?" Emo Xiaofei said indifferently, "I can't ignore it. Since I can't, I'll help." Jiu Ji Ming shook her head. "You must know that everything has a reason. Even a drowning person may be a heinous person. Do you have to help him?" Emo Xiaofei said seriously, "When you see someone drowning, do you have to consider whether he is a bad person before you help him?" Emo Xiaofei shook his head. "You can't know in advance. And once he drowns, it's the most dangerous situation. You don't have time to find out what kind of person he is. But one thing is certain. Once you hesitate, the drowning person will die. In the end, you may even know that he is a good person. And you kill a good person with your own hands. On the other hand, if you know that the person is a bad person, you will be relieved secretly. But at this time, you have lost your mind. Because you have become the weak water that can drown people." Jiu Ji Ming remained silent for a while before she finally nodded. "Then you can go to Little Tsilong Hall first. I will carefully examine this village girl. I should have a result before dawn. I will come to you when the time comes." "Thank you." Emo Xiaofei smiled as if he was relieved. Then, he walked past Jiu Ji Ming calmly. Jiu Ji Ming whispered to herself, "What a pure person!" But when Susanoo returned to his divine palace, and prepared to gather the many soldiers under his command, there was a source of soldiers that did not receive a response. His oracle was not accepted by anyone, which made Susanoo feel that something was wrong. As the three noble sons, they were born from the authority of Izanagi and Izanami, the creators of the world of Yenwue. Although they couldn't see through all things like the Father God and the Mother God, they were not bad when it came to premonitions. "You wait for me here." Inside the divine palace, Susanoo, who was wearing a crimson warrior armor, stood up and gave instructions to the witches below, then he disappeared from the divine palace. Susanoo was in charge of the sea between many islands. The turbulent sea water couldn't stop him at all. Soon after, Susanoo landed on a barren, black, and rugged island. As soon as he landed, he felt something different. The sky above the island was covered with dark clouds all year round. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. But at this moment it seemed to have weakened a lot. In addition, he found the body of one of his subordinates here. It seemed that he was killed by something. The body was fragmented, but the wound was very smooth. Susanoo narrowed his eyes behind the devil-like mask. "This is the remnant sword chi?" It's so sharp. No, this is not sword chi. This is sword intent. Susanoo was surprised. While thinking, his body flashed again and again as if he was taking a stroll, but each step was very far away. Evil spirit! Susanoo finally came to the entrance of a huge cave. A thunderous voice rang, but at the same time, he smelled the strong smell of blood. There was a fierce battle here. There shouldn't be such a strong smell of blood. He knew that these evil spirit subordinates were ferocious in nature. Even if they were in the same clan, they would fight for a long time. But they didn't show a belligerent behavior. They wouldn't see each other as real underground killers. Could it be a country that stopped the army? Susanoo shook his head. This possibility was very small. If it was another evil spirit tribe, it might be possible. But the evil spirits on this island were raised by the Lord of the Ocean, Susanoo. It was an open secret. The human king didn't want to court death to this extent. Finally, he came to the end of the tunnel. A green evil spirit whose body was cut in half fell on the road at the end of the tunnel. It was a clean cut, and there was a look of horror on his face. The anger in Susan Meizuan's heart increased a bit, and he immediately stepped over the corpse. In front of him, in the huge cave, a large number of evil spirit corpses fell everywhere. Except for the evil spirit corpses, Susanoo couldn't see anyone else at all. "Hey, there's one missing!" A sudden voice sounded. Susanoo instantly raised his head and looked at the upper left position. In front of a small stone room made by the evil spirits to rest, a young man in strange clothes and a scarf was dragging a ghost corpse out. In his other hand, he directly carried a long sword on his shoulder. When the young man with the sword saw Susanoo, he simply threw away the evil ghost corpse in his hand and jumped down. However, he was sizing him up. "You are somewhat different from these evil ghosts. Are you a leader or something? Did you kill them?" Susanoo's voice gradually turned cold. "Young man." Taisetsu nodded indifferently. He was killing these ugly monsters. He even found many human skeletons and cooking tools in one of the stone rooms. There were also human bones on the cooking utensils. When he was brought in by Azure, he even saw some evil spirits roasting a human body. Killing these evil spirits was not stressful at all. Even it felt good. Then, Susanoo slowly pulled out the sword on his waist and said indifferently, "Use your life to pay for it." He didn't say anything more. He was originally a fierce god. The blood on his hands was probably more than the total number of gods in the Takamajiehara. "You want to fight because of a disagreement? I like it." Daz waved his sword to block Susanoo's slash, but his body was suddenly knocked to the ground by a huge force and dragged a few meters away. Taisetsu shook his numb arm in surprise. Using Jean Lu required a physical body. If he used Onyx Soul's atomization ability, he wouldn't be able to hold Jean Lu's body. Susanoo saw that this guy could barely block his attack, so he naturally looked down on him. "Your strength is not bad. No wonder you can take all the evil spirits here. But if you want to deal with me, you are still 100 years too early. The gap between a human and a god can't be made up at all." Daz turned Jean Lu's right hand to his left hand, then he swung it and muttered, "I say, the boss asked me to do a warm-up, but the evil ghosts here are all brittle. It seems that the one who is really used to warm-up should be you." "Boss? Don't care about these details." Daz untied the scarf he was wearing, then stuffed it into his clothes. He smiled at Susan Minazun and said, "Jean Lu said that it can beat you 10. This sword is actually a sword of strength?" Taisetsu couldn't help but ridicule. It seemed that if he didn't speak these words for it, it would directly pull his body uncontrollably, just like when he was first pulled into this cave. "Arrogant!" Susanoo suddenly exploded. "I'll let you see the true power of a god. You don't know anything about power." Taisetsu pointed his long sword. This was also what Jean Lu said. "Damn it, when I picked you up and used you to kill the evil spirit in the reservoir, I didn't know you liked to show off so much." Sword of Tatsuka! Susanoo roared, and the huge power made the whole cave begin to shake violently. Jean-Lou's body suddenly emitted a strong light at this moment, and golden lines appeared on the quaint sword. Taisetsu suddenly felt a huge force flowing into his body. For a moment, he had an illusion that even the sky could be split open. Taisetsu, who was born to fight and slash people, didn't hesitate at all. He suddenly swung Jean-Lou and cut it like a watermelon knife. There was no such thing as swordsmanship. It was just a straightforward slashing technique used in street fights. Susanoo snorted coldly. He waved the sword of Tatsuka in his hand to block this unorganized attack. But after blocking it, he suddenly felt bad. His own Tatsuka sword was actually cut by the opponent's sword a little, and even the blade was curled up. At the same time, a huge force pressed down on his body, causing his legs to sink directly into the hard rock. Susanoo was shocked. This guy was not a brilliant swordsman at all. At this time, he was holding the sword like holding a kitchen knife. He only knew how to chop the ground. But this kind of attack was like chopping firewood. The power of each strike was terrifying, and the speed was so fast that he couldn't catch it. What was worse was that he couldn't remember when such a powerful swordsman appeared in the human world. After blocking for 4 or 5 times, the sword of Tatsuka had a gap of the same number. The sword of Tatsuka had accompanied Susanoo for many years and had made countless contributions. At this time, he was so heartbroken that he almost wanted to cry. "Who the hell are you?" Susanoo exclaimed, but under the last block, the Tatsuka sword was directly cut in half by the opponent. The broken blade flew into the air, spinning rapidly, and finally inserted into the rock above. At this time, the other party said heavily, "My name is Taisetsu. From now on, after 12 o'clock at night, I will be in charge. Forget what I said." Chapter 693. Wisps of purple smoke came out from the cut of the Tatsuka sword. In just a moment, the purple smoke had filled the entire bottom of the cave. Daz was slightly surprised. Looking at the purple smoke that became thick around him, he thought this was some trick of the warrior in red armor in front of him. He felt that there was something with a certain degree of danger, and it was stirring at this time. He only felt a sudden chill on his back, a bad feeling, and he instantly soared up. He saw a very long shadow passing by. It was a huge head with a super long neck, a snake head. Taisetsu's feet landed on a platform above the cave. In the thick purple smoke below, he saw a huge shadow. At the same time, huge heads began to rush out of the smoke and madly bite Taisetsu. Bang 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 dash. When these loud noises sounded, Susanoo had already left the cave and stood somewhere outside, looking from afar. Tatsuka's sword is broken. Hakata is also free. You can enjoy it. Susanoo snorted coldly and left the place without looking back. The thing that left the Tatsuka sword was a terrifying local beast, Hakata no Orochi. At that time, Susanoo used a trick to make Hakata no Orochi drunk and took the opportunity to cut off its head. But this beast, without a body, seemed to be more terrifying when it was only active with its soul. Fortunately, the Tatsuka sword was quite mysterious in sealing the soul. Even if the body of the Hakata no Orochi died, its soul was in a drunken state because of drinking the special wine, so it was finally sealed in the Tatsuka sword. Yamato no Orochi's hatred for Susanoo has been accumulating for a long time. Now that he has broken the seal, he will definitely not let him go. Now, he can only take this terrifying human as prey before it finds out. After a fight, he will leave first. Amaterasu's subordinate, Oziuzheim, is right. Susanoo's eyes were extremely solemn under the ghost mask. That guy from the mortal world really has such terrifying power. We can't just sit here and wait for death. We can't let Mother Goddess Yenwua shatter. The Hakata serpent was more distressed. It shouldn't have been greedy. In the end, it was sealed in the sword of Tatsuka by that little brat's trick. For it didn't matter whether it had a body or not, because its ability was to transform its body between reality and illusion. It just needed a certain amount of time. However, since he had already broken out of the seal, the little brat who plotted against him back then should suffer his wrath. That little brat escaped? No matter, I can lock onto his aura. As for this little guy in front of me, isn't he a little special? It didn't smell like a human, but it seemed to contain a decent amount of power. He decided to swallow it and recover. Roar! The Hakata serpent's 8 huge heads made a sound at the same time, which kept refracting in the cave and then overlapping. It was no less than a thunderclap in a rainstorm. Taisetsu covered his ears with some discomfort. The sound of the 8 snake-headed monster didn't seem to be simple sound wave. At this moment, Jean Lu once again burst out a strong light, and a strong force gushed out again. Taisetsu's spirit was shaken, and his power suddenly increased. He directly jumped down and chopped at one of the Hakata serpent's heads. His body turned into a stream of light, and his speed was almost unstoppable. The Hakata serpent, which had just broken the seal and hadn't fully awakened, seemed to have sobered up a lot after the roar. But suddenly, it only felt an unbearable pain. One of its heads had been directly chopped off. The moment the severed head fell to the ground, it turned into a pool of strange liquid and melted. Then, it seemed to evaporate, disappearing in an instant. Taisetsu glanced at it and thought to himself, "It just looks scary?" At this moment, the Hakata serpent was shocked. The remaining 7 heads and 14 eyes all looked at Taisetsu, or rather, at the Jean Lu sword in his hand. "Jean Lu, why did you come to this broken place? You still don't want to let go of our Shangliu clan? Damn Kelowna Taoist!" Taisetsu looked up. He saw that the remaining 7 heads of the Hakata serpent emitted more purple smoke, and its entire body completely turned into mist in a short period of time. It quickly sank into the soil. Taisetsu frowned and subconsciously swung Jean Lu forward. A golden sword light directly split open the mountain where the cave was, and then a huge crack that was hundreds of meters long appeared with him as the starting point. Taisetsu vaguely felt that this sword strike should have hit the purple smoke, but it didn't seem to have killed it. Jean Lu's surging power had stopped at this time, and Daz had a feeling of physical exhaustion. It seemed that this borrowed power would greatly consume something similar to his physical strength. "Now, I'm done warming up, right?" Taisetsu remade Jean Lu into a key and then wrapped the scarf around it. Then, he walked to the edge of the Devil Island. To his surprise, the dark clouds on the road began to disperse, and a beam of sunlight began to shine down. Taisetsu looked at the endless sea and suddenly thought of a serious problem. He was thrown here by the boss, and then, how can I go back? Taisetsu's stupefied face was fresh out of the oven. It was as if he was chasing the stars and the moon. The light that flew in the sky like a shooting star was Amaterasu Amakami and one of the 3 goddesses, Oziu Jiming, who were heading to Takamagara. "God Lord, we will arrive at Takamagara in a while." Oziu Jiming's voice sounded quite solemn at this time. She suddenly said, "What is in the unripe rice village that requires the 3 noble sons to gather?" Oziu Jiming, what do you want to say? Amaterasu Amakami suddenly stopped. Oziu Jiming said sternly at this time, "I have more important things to report about the unripe rice village." Amaterasu Amakami suddenly frowned. "Why didn't you say it when we were in the country of Darkness's palace?" "God Lord, please calm down." Oziu Jiming was shocked. "I don't know if I should say it. After all, Master Tsukuyami and Susanoo-sama were also there." Amaterasu Amakami landed on a mountain peak below at this time, and Oziu Jiming followed directly. Amaterasu looked at the mountains at this time and said slowly, "You report it first." But it seemed that Amaterasu should no longer blame him. Oziu Jiming took a step forward at this time, lowered her voice, and said solemnly, "God Lord, have you ever heard of such a place where no matter what you want, as long as you can pay the price, you can buy it. In fact, it was something that even the gods could move for. Could also be realized. I'm afraid that even Izanagi and Izanagi can't whisper the temptation. Even the gods are tempted. Amaterasu Amakami was taken aback, then frowned. Nonsense. Where did you hear this fallacy? Is it the words of the evil spirit that steals the world hidden in the unripe rice village? Oziu Jiming raised her head at this time and said puzzledly, God Lord, you just said, the evil spirit that steals the world? Amaterasu Amakami sighed at this time and said, forget it, it's time for you to know. It's good to be mentally prepared in advance. Not long ago I was uneasy, so I went to Yahiro-do in person and met the Father and Mother God. Then I learned. Amaterasu Amakami briefly said what she knew from Yayodu, and Ajin Island's Haim had already walked in front of Amaterasu Amakami. Her face was full of shock and fear, but she listened very carefully for fear that she would miss a thing. Therefore, I temporarily reconciled with Tsukuyumi and Susanoo. Amaterasu Amakami sighed. Now, do you know everything? The world has reached such a time of crisis. Oziu Jiming's face was pale. It was a look of extreme horror. Amaterasu shook his head at this time, then asked, the thing you just said, where did you hear it from? Is it really a rumor spread by the evil spirit hidden in the unripe rice village? Ajin Island's Haim hurriedly stepped forward. God Lord, I heard this from Erex. Erex? Who? Amaterasu thought for a while. She was trying hard to search for everything about this name in her memory. But at this moment, a sharp pain began to spread from her body. A beautiful odachi had directly pierced through her body. Oziu Jiming, you actually. Amaterasu Amakami looked at the other party in disbelief. The goddess born from her divine power betrayed her. I'm called Mickey. Oziu Jiming's body gradually changed, and she finally became a girl in a kimono. Pa-dash! That was the sound of both hands hitting at the same time. Zhuefeng looked at the mosquito that died on his palm. He was extremely dissatisfied. The mosquitoes in this damn place were not afraid of the beastkin aura at all. They even dared to approach. The unripe rice village should be nearby, right? Zhuefeng looked at the surrounding environment, but he seemed to hear something coming from the shadow of the trees on the side of the road. They were carrying a lantern. The lantern was taken from a house on the road. Of course, they put down some copper coins as if they bought it. Who is it? Zhuefeng opened his palm, and his nails began to become sharp. Then, he slowly approached, only to see a figure walking out of the tree trunk at this time. Then, before she could say a word, she fell directly to the ground. This scene. Where did I see it? Zhuefeng was stunned and walked up to her. He turned the person over and saw that it was a woman. Her face was pale, and there was a terrible wound on her body. There was still blood at the corner of her mouth. Her mouth moved slightly as if she was saying something, but her voice was very soft. It sounded like she was sleep-talking.